Good morning. Welcome to the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners Agenda Setting Work Session for this Tuesday, July 20th, 2021. It's 9:03 a.m. My name is Ty Menser, Chair of the Board. To my left is the Vice Chair, Commissioner Gary Edwards. We have County Manager Miro Chavez, Assistant County Manager Robin Campbell, County Engineer Scott Lindblom's in the room. We have our Public Information Director Megan Porter and Clerk of the Board Amy Davis. Okay, public can attend through our live stream Thurston County YouTube channel. And let's pick up with item 1, which is COVID-19 update. We missed this last week because of our abbreviated agenda setting on Thursday. So, and I see Dr. Abdulmalik is present. Dr. A, are you?
Yeah, she's going to take over today, Commissioner. Shelley Slaughter is taking a well-deserved break this week, so Dr. Abdulmalik will cover for her.
Go ahead, Dr. A, floor is yours.
Good morning, Commissioners. We are on day 531 of our COVID-19 response.
There we go.
To date, there have been 461,847 COVID-19 cases in Washington State, 6,043 deaths in Washington State. In Thurston County, we've had 11,412 total cases and 99 deaths. 686 Thurston County residents have been hospitalized for COVID-19 during the pandemic. At this point, our rate per 100,000 is climbing upwards at 96.2 cases per 100,000 over the past 14 days. And our test positivity rate has climbed as well to 5.6%. To date, we have had 62 congregate care outbreak investigations and we have 0 current congregate care outbreaks. 90% of adult staffed ICU beds are occupied. 5% with COVID-19 patients. In terms of a vaccine update, there have been 8,032,919 vaccine doses given in the state of Washington. 293,190 vaccine doses have been given to Thurston County residents. This comes out to 52.8% of total population in our county. That's counting all 291,000 of us have initiated vaccine, and 48.6% of our county, and that's everybody, is fully vaccinated. This translates into 62.9% of folks over 16 initiating vaccination and 58.1% of folks over 16 being fully vaccinated. We are seeing an increase in our case counts, which mirrors what's happening across the state and across the country. In the past week, 50% of our cases were in the under 40 age group. So 20% 19 and under, 21% of our cases in the past week were in the 20 to 29 age group, and 20% were in the 30 to 39 age group. I would like to ask that all Thurston County residents that are able to do so access a vaccine. We continue to have our vaccination area in the mall, and there are multiple vaccination opportunities throughout the county, which can be found on our website. This week, we continue to have testing events. So today we're at Rochester. Wednesday, we're going to be at Lacey. And Thursday we'll be at Union Gospel Mission, and Friday at Evergreen State College. The addresses and specific information are also on our website. And with that, I would like to stop there and answer any questions you may have.
The only question I have right now is that, you say 5% of our beds are tied up with COVID, and we've had 686 hospitalized. Is that for Thurston County or for our region, our designated region?
So my current understanding is that the data that I'm reporting is Thurston County residents.
Okay.
And the hospitalization data is cumulative since the pandemic began, and it's only COVID-19 related hospitalizations.
But again, that's from just Thurston County?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
No questions for me.
Grace, something I'm meaning to ask you about was one of the scarier things that I've seen during this pandemic was, I think back last September, when there was a study of some athletes at Ohio State who had basically, there was an outbreak and they'd all recovered, no problem, but they did some further follow-up with them and they showed some sort of long-term damage to their heart or something like that. I didn't hear any more about that. That seemed to me, was that study discredited, or are they still working on sort of like examining some of the things that were suggested by that, or do you remember that study that I'm referring to?
Yes, so I haven't seen a follow-up to that study, and I'm definitely happy to look and see if they followed up those specific patients. I do know that we're learning more and more about the persistent aftermath of COVID-19 that can affect more than 20% of folks that have it. So, in terms of, there have been multiple studies on lingering symptoms, including cough, shortness of breath, rapid heart rate, among others, that can last much longer than folks are infectious. I think at this point, we're learning more about the underlying cause, how COVID impacts these prolonged symptoms. So we're definitely still in the learning phase, and I can look and see if there's been follow-up on those athletes.
Okay, Chair, can I ask one more
Go
question?
ahead, Commissioner.
Could you comment a little bit on the new variant and how that affects us here locally?
So the Delta variant is a variant of concern, and it is rapidly becoming the dominant variant in Washington State. We are looking, so the Washington State Department of Health issues sequencing data weekly. So I would be expecting a report in the next few days. As of our last sequencing report, there were seven samples taken from Thurston County residents were positive for the Delta variant. And I anticipate, just because it is more transmissible, and we're still learning exactly how and why it's more transmissible. Right now, some of the early data, and I stress that this is not conclusive, this is early data, shows that people that with the Delta variant in particular, people may become infectious earlier. So, instead of, for example, if for the initial COVID-19 strains, so this is a distribution, so different people are going to become infectious at different times, which is why the 14-day quarantine is so important. But whereas folks with the older variants might have their greatest chance of becoming infectious at 6 days or later after exposure, we're seeing that it's a little earlier for the Delta variant. And what we're also seeing is that the Delta variant replicates faster within people. So people have a much higher viral burden with this variant than with other variants, which then translates into the potential for there to be more infectious particles in respiratory droplets. But once again, I'm stressing we're still learning all of the facets of this new variant.
County manager was next, and then we'll go to Commissioner.
Doctor, related to the Delta variant and the new cases, is there any indication that the new cases, as well as the Delta variant, are more prevalent in those who have been they're not vaccinated, or those breakthrough cases for those who have been vaccinated? Is there any data related to that or not yet?
So there is. So really what we're seeing, across the country and in Washington state is the vast majority of cases that we're seeing are in folks that are unvaccinated. And the Delta variant does pose the highest risk to those who haven't yet been vaccinated and those who haven't yet been infected with COVID-19, who haven't yet had that exposure. We are also looking at whether the Delta variant causes more severe disease, which is another thing that we're monitoring here in Thurston and of course across the state. In terms of vaccine breakthroughs, in Washington state, so I want to stress that the number of vaccine breakthroughs is still very small. As of the most recent report from July 14th, there were fewer than 3,000 vaccine breakthrough cases. So 2,925 were reported. The Delta variant does account for a disproportionate number of breakthrough cases. So meaning that the variant sequenced from samples taken from vaccine breakthrough cases, a greater number of those show the Delta variant compared to the total prevalence over the same time period in the community. However, this is all very, very small. These are very small numbers compared to the millions of Washingtonians that have been vaccinated. To date, all 3 of the FDA-approved vaccines provide protection from the Delta variant, especially when you're thinking about severe illness, hospitalizations, and deaths.
Thank you.
I was going to ask in relation to the booster shot that's going down the pipeline and how it relates to the Delta variant.
So that is a topic of that is a hot topic in public health. To date, the CDC and the FDA, looking at the data that we have here in the U.S., do not recommend a booster at this time. And what they're looking at is, the number of breakthrough cases or severe illness in folks who've been vaccinated. So that's a lot of what the CDC and FDA are looking at, and they haven't seen anything in our domestic data to signal that way at this time. But this is a dynamic situation. I know that other countries are taking a different approach.
Thank you.
Dr. A, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is homeless strategies update, and
Bill Mirno is also out of the office this week, and Tom is going to take and give an update.
Good morning, Commissioners. Tom Webster with Public Health and Social Services. So just a brief update for you today, primarily to update you on our rental assistance activities. So Community Action Council is our primary contractor who's been implementing rent assistance, and they're really ramping up. So to date, they have served 956 households. This is for 2021. This does not go back to 2020 data. So just for 2021, they've served 956 households. They have 701 households with applications in process and 677 households with appointments, but not yet in process. So far, they've made $6,288,000 in rent assistance payments. That's an increase of $851,000 over last week. So they put out $850,000 of rent assistance payments in the last week alone. Utility assistance payments to date, $220,000, and other housing assistance payments of $32,000. So we've seen a real increase and uptick from the last week or two as they ramp up. Also, Community Youth Services is also providing services to date. They've served 56 households. They have 98 applications in process and another 85 with appointments but not in process. And Community Youth Services has paid a total of $454,000 in rent assistance payments around $2,600 in utility assistance and $4,200 in other housing assistance payments. The other thing I wanted to mention is there have been many meetings last week. The governor announced a bridge program for rent assistance. So the eviction moratorium has come to an end. There is a bridge program in place or getting up in place. We've had meetings with the Dispute Resolution Center and Thurston County Volunteer Legal Services. So there are several requirements in place before landlords can proceed with eviction actions against a tenant. One of those is that tenant needs to have an opportunity to access these rent assistance dollars. So Thurston County has posted on our website that our rent assistance program is up and operational. However, another requirement of that bridge program is that the Dispute Resolution Center processes are fully operational. And the Dispute Resolution Center is not yet ready to certify that they are up and running. Even though they're active, there's some other steps, including hiring and training of additional staff, and also coordination with the courts. And that sounds like it's going to take a couple more weeks before that is fully implemented. So just want to convey that we are in close communication and cooperation with the Dispute Resolution Center and Thurston County Volunteer Legal Services to implement the governor's bridge, this bridge program that's taking effect. And that is my update, and happy to answer any questions.
No questions, thank you.
No, sir.
Commissioner. Okay.
Go ahead.
Tom, this is more of a comment. Considering the bridge program, the governor has announced is going to increase the demand for applications for those who need rental and utility assistance. And we are working to find different ways as to how we're going to be able to meet the additional demand that perhaps is coming down the pike. So I just want to say that more of a comment. They were looking for different alternatives and see how we can meet the demand that perhaps is coming as a result of the new governor's bridge program.
Great. Yes, thank you for that. I will also note that the numbers of households with applications in process and also the number of households with appointments but not yet in process, those numbers are decreasing over the previous week. So CAC is making good progress in bringing those numbers down and getting through that backlog of households, but there's still a ways to go.
Okay. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you. Tom, I have a few questions. If some of these are more keenly appropriate, let me know, but do your best. Friday at the Three Cities meeting, the topic came up. This is a meeting between city administrators and executive with the county. There was a discussion about the Ensign Road, the RVs, the safe parking program that didn't get off the ground. There was clearly an impetus from the city of Olympia to advance this and find an alternative location for the RVs on Ensign Road. They said that they gave multiple reasons for this, and Providence is getting impatient, and there's becoming an exacerbation of the problem, kind of back to where we were when this whole thing started. Lo and behold, yesterday I had an email from Providence leadership asking for a meeting with myself and the county manager. So this is my takeaway from the last 2 days, work days, is that this is going to be a hot topic, and there's going to be another impetus to try to succeed where we failed last year, to try to find an alternative location for RVs. So I guess I'm just throwing that out there. If you hadn't heard that, it's coming. If you have heard it, I'd be curious if anything you knew about it. They were throwing all sorts of potential locations out. We're kind of back to where we started. But I think that there comes a certain point where we have to, the problem's not going away, and you can kick a can down the road to a certain point, and then you have to just make a decision that maybe some people aren't going to like. But I see Commissioner Mejia's hand out of the corner of my eye. Go ahead.
Yes, so we actually had the RHC executive meeting on Friday where we were discussing that in particular. not sure if you know this, but the city of Olympia just approved to buy the Quality Inn Hotel.
That was next on my list.
And within those plans, what we talked with Councilmember Cooper was Ensign Road and seeing, you know, how they could move that there. I think they're still, and Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, they're still looking at plans and seeing how they're going to approach this. But I know, I think I stressed the emergency about in regards to Ensign Road and the chutes in particular, and how, you know, if the space is available, we need to move those people there, hopefully, but.
Is there possible room at the hotel that they purchased? Is that the idea?
So the hotel, part of it is burned down, right?
Yes, so the hotel, you're correct. The hotel is burned, and so it's on the current property owner to finish the demolition of that property. So the site will be clear before the sale is completed and City of Olympia takes possession of that property.
So they didn't buy a hotel, they bought a property.
They bought right, there was a hotel on the property, but it will be, yes, an empty property once they acquire it.
And then what's their plan for that property?
We have been in discussions with City of Olympia. We're aware that City of Olympia has several possible plans for that property, including kind of safe parking. So those discussions are ongoing. I don't think there's been I'm not aware of any final decision from the City of Olympia on the use of that property, but certainly safe parking is one element, as well as kind of a long-term plan for permanent housing.
Yeah, I did not get the sense from that conversation that property was designed to handle the RVs, because they kept bringing up parking lots owned by the county near the family court as potential locations, and you know, that was not my understanding that that's where they were targeting the RVs is this new property. So I was a little confused because I hadn't heard. It was my first time hearing this sort of reinvigoration of this, but we're gonna have a meeting with Providence and I think we're gonna learn more. I just wanted to know what you knew about all of this.
Yeah, we certainly are aware, and there certainly are many conversations going on. So we've had conversations, as Commissioner Mejia indicated, at the Regional Housing Council executive team level, at the Regional Housing Council technical team level. So there's certainly ongoing conversations and folks are well aware. I think at this point, I'm not aware of any final decisions, that there's lots of planning, lots of kind of options and considerations. And we're not quite, I don't believe Olympia has made any final decision. So this is a good opportunity for the county to weigh in. But those conversations are ongoing, I think is the best I would characterize them.
Okay, I guess part of my impetus for bringing this up is if there's a proposal out there like that at that level, then it, you know, I'd like at the earliest possible time it come to us to evaluate the pros and cons, because there always are a lot of pros and cons. But you know, it's going to need to come to the board and be discussed, because we've kind of gone, it's like our third time through the kind of looking at first it was about the mitigation side, then it was about safe parking, and now this is like round 3 of trying to evaluate county properties for appropriate places for fixing a problem.
Hey, Tom, could you provide a perspective as to how this renewed energy, obviously to try to resolve this very difficult issue, relates to the scattered site pilot project that we're currently implementing? Is that a relationship how we can probably use the scattered site pilot project to either help, or this is gonna be a hindrance? I'm a little bit off on that one.
Yeah, it's they're related, and certainly the issues on Ensign Road impact our scattered site. The scattered site project got up and running this week, and so scattered site is trying to mitigate and address some of the challenges that are faced on Ensign Road. But certainly the scattered site project, the contractors are not responsible for finding a new location for those RVs. That's really on the kind of the regional housing council, the city, the county to try to solve the long-term Ensign Road challenges. So I think as you know, there was a City of Olympia undertook efforts to kind of clean up kind of Ensign Road, do some cleaning, clearing of the sidewalks, pumping out RVs, providing additional dumpsters. That is all work related to the scattered site activity to create a more sustainable baseline, I guess is perhaps one way to kind of phrase it. And so the scattered site contractors are on site working with Ensign Road. But the long-term solutions, so they're related and it may impact Ensign Road, the scattered site, but there's still a need for that long-term solution. I don't know, I guess that's the best way I can answer that. Sorry if that's not exactly clear.
All right, thanks.
Scattered site update was my third thing. And my second thing, I guess, is kind of covered by Commissioner Mejia. I wanted to know about this hotel purchase, which I guess is now a land purchase. I didn't understand that. And how it fits in the RHC's plan in the county. We've been to discussion about the hotel. So it sounds like that's still a viable question because we don't have a hotel. There has not been a purchase of a hotel where there could be transitional housing.
There is some options that perhaps going to be discussed at the Regional Housing Council. I had initial conversations with the City of Lacey, perhaps looking at an option for a hotel within the City of Lacey. And that conversation needs to keep growing because when we have something more tangible, I will bring that option obviously to the board if that's the board wants to pursue on that. There is an effort and a desire to use some of the ARP funding to do that. And as you may recall, some of my initial suggestions to you included some of that action as well. So before we can I have a little more information that I can present to the board, there needs to be more discussions because purchasing a motel perhaps has the least and more straightforward action any jurisdiction can take is the operations behind it and the cost and the long term that we need to make sure that we address. Because it's not just about finding purchasing the infrastructure, it's making sure that that infrastructure is sustainable and long term. And that is really some of the conversations that we need to have at the Regional Housing Council, if that is an approach the Regional Housing Council will like to take.
I have a question. Weren't there acquisition funds from the state for hotels?
Yes, and that is I think that application is coming up, right?
Yeah, so there is a NOFA, Notice of Funding Availability from the state. The first round of application is due August 4th. That application does require, which in my opinion is contradictory, requires actual a purchase and sale agreement in place or kind of that you own the land. So I don't know, for rapid acquisition, it seems like you already need to have that in place before you can apply for these funds. There will be a second round of funding available beginning in September with applications due in November. So we have looked at that at this point. Actually believe City of Olympia may be moving forward for the purchase of the Quality Inn, accessing these dollars since they have a purchase and sale agreement in place. But for the county, because we don't have, we're not far enough along in the process, we will not be ready for this round of the NOFA, but we understand there will be a second round later this fall that we may have an opportunity to apply for if the project is able to move forward.
Tom, I had a note. Commissioner Mejia's question triggered my memory. When I attended this Challenge Seattle meeting with Chris Gregoire and the other county executives, there was a reference made to a new document recording fee from the last legislative session. Is that connecting up to this money that Commissioner Mejia is talking about, or is that something else? Or
that is a different pot of money. There is a $100 document recording fee. That's going to be known as 1277. So another House bill number for us to remember. So Department of Commerce is going through a stakeholdering process to determine how to utilize those funds. Part of those funds will be used to support the operations of permanent supportive housing. So it is a funding source we expect to help fund operations. There's also an intent for those funds to be used for a permanent rental assistance program. But the Department of Commerce is determining and writing the rules and allocating on how do they want to allocate those funds. So we expect those funds to arrive probably early in 2022. So there has been a new document recording fee, but we do not know all the eligible uses for that yet or the amount of funding that we'll receive. Well, although a $100 document recording fee is substantial, and so we expect to receive a significant amount of money under this new program.
Okay, that's really important as the board looks at, there was the 1590 tool that was being promoted, and, so how those things fit together is really important. Just a commentary, I'm actually the one that asked for there to be a standing, homeless strategies update at the beginning of every agenda setting meeting, and these are the kind of things that I really want to know about, kind of breaking news, new developments. I don't really need a recitation of, stats on rental assistance. I'm not criticizing you, Tom, but just if you and Keely can kind of focus on, what's new and what's going on that the commissioners need to know. I don't like going places and not feeling like I'm informed. And this issue area evolves so quickly and so rapidly. That's why I felt like the commissioners needed a weekly kind of what's new on the ground. The fact that I hadn't even heard of $1,277 till I heard it in passing at a meeting last week is kind of incredible to me. So we need to be informed of these new things. I'm out promoting potentially a future sales tax, for permanent supportive housing operation, and now there's legislative change that I wasn't aware of. So help us with that by trying to give us this information on these Monday or Tuesday morning updates. Commissioner Edwards.
Will do. Thank you for that feedback.
Yep.
Tom, we've got that issue that's going on up in the Seattle area where we've had about 100 vehicles hit with bricks and I guess no deaths yet, but and they were talking about the possibility that the state did have quite a few millions of dollars available. It was going to be coming available this month to address those type of encampments that are possibly on the state right away. And I'm wondering about that Wheeler Street location over there. I'd hate to see those folks starting to throw rocks at cars when they go by, and maybe we could be proactive and look into the funding that might be available from the state that is supposed to be coming available this month. You know anything about that?
I'm not sure what funds I can look into that and try to find out more. I know there was some funds for Department of Transportation for cleaning up and support for encampments on Department of Transportation property. I don't know if we have. I have to look more into those funds. I'm not sure of the details.
Okay, it sounds like it might be something that we could address, that Hamburger Hill business and the Wheeler Street issue before. I'd like to be proactive. I'd like to see that not happen in our community if we could get ahead of it.
Yeah, understood.
Robin?
Could that possibly have been the new criminal justice windfall the counties are about to receive?
No, this was specifically, I heard it on Channel 4 News, I think, they were talking about it. And apparently the city or the state did not know of the availability of the funds, but some investigative reporter for Channel 4 found out that later this month in July, so I don't know, a lot of things took place on July 25th, I think, that become new law. And apparently there's a funding source in there for the Department of Transportation, sizable amount of money, to help offset housing arrangements and the problem that we're seeing up there. I'd hate to see us have a couple of months of brick throwing. So if you could look into it, thank you.
Okay, anything else, Tom? Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to item 3, which is reviewing this afternoon's board meeting agenda. Call to order at 2 p.m. Pledge of allegiance to be led by Commissioner Mejia. Consideration of the agenda and board meeting minutes from June 29th. Opportunity for public to address the board. County manager update.
I was out of the office last week, commissioners, and I did have the opportunity to read public testimony of last week. And I have a follow-up to make, that's from the comment from Mr. Johanna, making some statements of perhaps the county has reduced the 4-H funding in 2020. I will not be able to respond today to those comments, but certainly I will respond that next week as I get additional information to his claims.
Is that it? Okay, any questions for Miro?
No, sir.
Okay, then let's look at the consent items. We removed a couple if I remember correctly, so we're left with A through D. 3A is a treasure item, sale of tax title property via private negotiation to Matthias Kitts.
So I believe you reviewed this agenda item, so I assume that you have a little bit of a feedback based on the review you did last week.
We actually didn't have any of the mapping or anything, so that we kind of kicked the discussion of it till today.
Oh, okay.
Because we didn't have
Sorry.
any information.
Sorry, I didn't.
So we haven't really looked at the properties or know anything about it.
Okay, so this particular property, and again, we can move this property to next week if that's what you would like to do.
I have seen Jeff, but I don't see him. Oh, there he is.
So
Morning,
this
Joe.
particular property is located within the Yellow area in the Clear Lake. It is encumbered by wetlands. It's considered to be unbuildable.
I've got 2 maps.
So this is for next week's agenda, because the other 2 items for the 27th. So there's 2 maps for next week.
Oh, okay, so the one for today is
So
not.
yeah. So one for today, I wasn't aware the maps were not provided.
And we don't have that in here.
No.
So we may
Certainly,
just want to,
if you want to delay that for next week.
well, go ahead, let's get to
So,
the.
okay.
Sorry.
So my apologies to that. This particular property has been in tax title since January 2015. And it is a 0.37 acres. And again, this particular property is considered to be unbuildable, is encumbered by wetlands. And the proposed selling price of this property is $700. And if we add the additional fees, it's a total transaction of $1,063.50. I provide you also with what would be the impact to the general fund, about 10% in taxes, that would be $0.76. And again, my apologies, I thought you reviewed this last week. If not, if you have additional questions related to this, I can move this item for next week, but Jeff Gutman is available.
Let's see what Jeff has to say. Go ahead, Jeff.
Good morning, commissioners, and thank you for your time this morning. Yeah, this one is, if you're at all familiar with Clearwood, there are portions of Clearwood that are nice and flat and buildable and all of that, but there's other portions of Clearwood where one lot might be perfectly flat, a lot next door is either a really steep knoll or a really deep hole. And in this case, you got 2 lots adjacent to this particular one that are nice and flat and have houses on them. This one happens to be one of those steep holes. And the wetlands are not mapped on the property, but according to the assessor's office appraisers, they've gone out looking at the wetland boundary markers. This lot is approximately 95% wet, and therefore it is not practical to build on. The applicant to buy this property is an adjacent property owner, so he's looking to make his property bigger. And I want to note that the offer price of $700 is 100% of the assessed value.
Questions from the board?
No, sir.
Would the board like to keep this on for this afternoon, or?
I'm okay with it if Jeff wants to move forward.
I'm not hearing anything that would, yeah, cause me to need more time, so let's just keep it on then.
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks, Jeff.
You're welcome.
Hold on, because we have other two on the next week's agenda.
Yes, I will.
Okay, appreciate it. Item 3B is Public Health and Social Services Resolution Establishing Position.
Yeah, I'm gonna walk you through this item, assuming that you've received some information related to this. This is for you to consideration, is to establish a temporary position with an end date of December 31st, 2022. And this is for the Public Health Program Assistant 2. And this is gonna be funded by a grant. And what is gonna be, this position is gonna be responsible for sending out permits, renewal notices, process payments, and route and track permit documents in a timely review. This particular activities are currently performed by the Administrative Assistant 2, which is starting to become a little bit overwhelming. And again, this is a temporary position to just overcome this additional work with an end date of December 31st, 2022. And this is funded again by the Washington State Department of Health through the consolidated contract they will have with them.
Questions about this item?
No questions.
No, sir.
No? Okay, go to 3C. Juvenile Court Probation, Superior Court Resolution Extending End Date of a Particular Position.
Yeah, Superior Court currently have a grant-funded position, and this position is the Superior Court Coordinator, which is the Safe Babies Case Coordinator that provides services within the court system. They have received notice, the grant has been extended for another year, and their request is to extend that position to September 30, 2022. And again, this is, funding is go through the Safe Babies 0 to 3 grant that is coming from the state to the courts to provide assistance to those moms or dads involved within the justice system to provide a daycare in a way.
Commissioner Mejia?
No questions.
Okay.
You probably know.
You're the one I would have looked to have any problems with this one.
No, oh, no, sir.
All right, good to go then. Item 3D is Auditor Voucher List. Any questions from the board? Just okay. Then we'll go to item 4A, Commissioner's appointment to the Agricultural Advisory Committee. This we've discussed and it was removed from consent just so we could exercise that vote.
That's my understanding. Last week, you had a conversation, and this is many conversations the board had related to this particular appointment. And the board decided last week to cut it as a department item. Usually this item is under consent, and that will give the commissioners the opportunity to exercise your vote on an individual basis.
Anything on this from the board?
No, sir.
No, sir.
5A, Emergency Services, Fiscal Year 2019 Pre-Disaster Mitigation Competitive Grant Program.
Yeah, Thurston County applied for the Pre-Disaster Mitigation Grant in 2019 to update the Thurston Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan. And this update will be the 4th edition of the Hazard Mitigation Plan in the Thurston County region. This is a multi-jurisdictional process to develop a mitigation strategy to reduce the risks of the most destructive hazards that we face in the region. This is a 5-year program, and this is required by FEMA. So the funding that we're going to be receiving is $166,611.08. And that is 75% of the total project cost of $222,149.30. There is obviously a required match of $55,538 or 25% of this grant of the project. And that will be matched by the work that is going to be performed by the Regional Planning Council, as well as the emergency services staff time will be also supplemented by the matching requirements. Clerk Harding, I believe is here. If you have any additional questions related to this item. Again, I'm just going through assuming the.
Yeah, we reviewed this at, I think, pretty good length last week.
Okay.
Any follow-up questions?
No, sir.
No, sir.
I think we're good to go.
Thank you.
Herb is here to go through that with us. Item 6A, Public Health, Department of Social and Health Services, Developmental Disabilities Administration, County Program Agreement.
So I believe you also reviewed this to item 6A and 6B are related.
Okay.
And this is, the item 6A is to receive a grant from the Washington State Department of Social and Health Services, particularly from the Developmental Disabilities Administration for $5,525,308 for the period July 1st, 2021 to June 30, 2022. This is a renewal program that we go through in providing services to those individuals in need, particularly on the developmental disabilities program that the Thurston County has. The county services that we support in this program is self-supported employment, high school transition, the pilot job foundation program, community information and education activities, technical and individual technical assistance, and community inclusion. The Thurston Mason Developmental Disabilities Department holds a contract with Career Quest, Center Force, EFI, Morningside, and Vegas to provide the services. So the next item, this item 6A, is to receive the money from the state. And item 6B is to go through the contract with those individuals, with those organizations just listed to provide those services in Thurston and Mason counties. Annalise Cole is here to clarify any information that I just stated.
Morning, Annalise. Anything you'd like to add to what we've got in front of us?
No, thank you. Good morning, commissioners, and thank you, Romero. I think that was a great summary of both of those particular requests.
No questions.
No questions.
No? Okay, good to go.
So just to clarify, 6B is for you to consider issuing the professional services contracts to those organizations, which is Career Quest, Center Force, Exceptional Foresters, EFI, Morningside, and Vegas to provide those services.
Yep, you got that. All right, thank you. Item 7 will be county manager, or the commissioners' reports, county manager reviewing schedule, adjournment. We have public hearings, 2 public hearings back-to-back, starting 3 o'clock or shortly thereafter. First one is Public Works regarding compression brake restrictions on segments of Little Rock and Churchill Road.
Yeah, commissioners, for your consideration, you have 2 actions for you this afternoon. Is for you to receive public testimonies on implementing restrictions and compression brakes on the segments of Little Rock and Churchill Road. The actions for your consideration is for you to close a public hearing, and for your as an option, if depending on the public testimony, is for you to approve an ordinance and that the Thurston County Code to implement those restrictions on using compression brakes.
No questions.
No questions. Okay, Matt's here, but got nothing for you, Matt. Next is item B for public hearings, which will be ordinance for the CPACER, or Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy and Resilience Program.
Yeah, commissioners, you will be receiving public testimony this afternoon related to a establishment of the Commercial Property Assessed Clean and Resilience Program, also known as the CPACER. There's been many conversations, the board has been involved on this particular program. This afternoon, Jenica Machado is ill today, so I will do my best to present this program. And again, for your consideration will be 2 actions. One is to close the public hearing, and depending on the public testimony, for your consideration will be for you to approve this ordinance. And I will walk you through as part of the staff report this afternoon, providing you with additional information related to this program.
And it's, if you wanted to add If you weren't already going to, you can add that it's one of the identified strategies in our Thurston climate
Yeah.
mitigation.
Yes, that's part of the PowerPoint. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on from this afternoon's agenda, we'll move to item 4 in this morning's agenda, which is a review of next proposed agenda for next Tuesday, July 27th. That meeting would be called to order at 2 p.m. Pledge of Allegiance to be led by Vice Chair Edwards, consideration of agenda and board meeting minutes, a presentation regarding Farmers Market Week.
Yeah, for consideration, in today's agenda packet, you have a draft proclamation for you to consider proclaiming the week of August 1st through August 7, 2021 as the Farmers Markets Week in Thurston County. I will coordinate with Amy to see if we can have members of the many different farmers markets to attend the meeting. And that will give you an opportunity to say thank you perhaps and give them a copy of the proclamation.
Anything on the proclamation?
No, sir.
So within your connections, if you have somebody associated with the farmers market who would like to attend this proclamation, please help us on that as well.
Okay.
Are you talking about multiple farmers markets?
Yeah, all the farmers markets and the county.
I've reached out to the contacts for the Olympia, Yeoman, Tenino Farmers Market.
Okay, good, thank
But
you.
if
There's a
there's anyone-
Tumwater as well.
Tumwater.
Yeah, and Tumwater, I'll reach out to
Yeah,
them.
yeah,
And if
anybody
there's anyone
associated
else-
with the farmers market, yeah.
Okay.
Sounds good, okay. Okay, then let's go to, there will be the public addressing the board, county manager's update. You mentioned you'll update on the 4-H, and then county, or the consent items, we have A, B, C, C, and D, so those need to be re-numbered, Amy. It should be A through E, and there's 2 Cs. Okay, so item 3A is the auditor item, resolution for capitalization thresholds.
Yeah, Commissioners, this is a follow-up to the briefing, the financial services from the auditor's office presented to you on July 1st, 2021, for your considerations to change the thresholds for capitalized assets here in the county. As a matter of background, at Resolution 12359 that was passed on November 13, 2000 is the last time the board considered putting thresholds on those capitalized amounts. And that was a single item, a single value of $5,000 that is currently in place. This proposal, as you heard in the briefing, allows it to spread that a bit a little more systematic in terms of how the capitalized thresholds should be in place. And this proposal includes for machinery and equipment to have a threshold of $10,000. For infrastructure, $75,000, construction in progress for $75,000, improvements other than buildings, $75,000. Buildings improvements and leasehold improvements for $75,000. Intangible assets, not including software for $100,000, and intangible assets, software for $1,000. So for $1 million. So those will give you a little more of a range. This is more of a way as to how we streamline the process, as to how we assess assets that we have here in the county.
And Darren Bennett is supporting it.
He was, yeah.
Okay, good enough. Thank you.
Any Commissioner? No? Okay. Yeah, that was pretty straightforward when we went through it pretty briefly. Item 3B is a treasurer item authorizing tax title property via private negotiation to Hinkle property.
Yeah, so those are the maps that I provided to you this morning. So the first one is the one this is located.
The one with the Puget Sound
Yeah,
Railroad.
tracks. Yeah.
Okay.
This particular property is located just east of the intersection of Albany Street and Little Rock. This particular property has been on a tax title property since January 2019. As you can see on the property, this property doesn't have any water, power, and doesn't have any actually access to this property. And it is proposed, this property is at 0.16 acres. and it's proposed to be sold by $2,600. If we add the additional fees, it's a total cost of $12,963.50. And also attached in your back page is the approximate tax generation to the general fund, which is about 10%, which is $10.71. Jeff Gagnon is here to answer any questions related to this. If not, if we cannot answer those questions, we can bring the answers for next week. But Jeff knows everything.
Yeah, Ramiro, thank you, Ramiro, and thank you, commissioners, for your time again this morning. Ramiro gave a really good introduction to this. Basically, this item and the next item are very near each other. They're not touching each other, though. The applicant is the same for both properties, and they are offering 100% of the assessed value for these properties. Right now, there is no developed access to the properties, no developed utilities to the properties, so that would all have to be borne by anybody that wanted to build on these properties. As of right now, because of the cost of road and utilities, each of these by themselves are not practical to build on, but I'm willing to entertain any questions.
Questions?
My only question would be on the one by Albany and Little Rock, is that near where that, we just developed a drainage area for that area? It's
No,
not,
no, it's further away.
okay.
Okay, so we're looking at what's 3B and then 2 items down.
Yeah,
there's
it's the
another
other one, Jeff, and I have a map for you as well on that.
And I see that I can match them up and see they're just like, there's one parcel in between them.
Yeah, it's just a little bit over, as Jeff stated. So if you take this map, the first one that I give you, this is the property on the 3B, and the next property is this one.
Yeah. I outlined it.
Yeah. And that second property is also, in a way, doesn't have road access, water, sewer, and is proposed to be sold for $8,000. If we add all the additional required fees, will be for $8,363.50. And as Jeff stated, those are the assessed value of those two properties.
Jeff, what makes I know the one has wetland or whatever, but if it's not buildable, either one, really, for development, what makes the one, so like the first one we looked at was like only $700 and it was like over a third of an acre versus this is smaller and worth a lot more.
So first of all, not using the term unbuildable, using the term not practical to build on as it sits.
Okay.
The first property this morning, it's 95% wet.
Okay.
I don't know how you would ever be able to get any kind of a building permit for it, but again, I don't work for CPED, so I don't know. These two particular properties are actually fairly level and flat. If they were bigger, they would probably be practical to build on. But in order to get water, I'm not sure where the sewer line ends around in that area. There's houses nearby, so I assume that, but I don't know if those houses are on septic or sewer. But they would have to meet current building codes. And so you've got to build a road to whatever standards are applicable. You've got to bring in the utilities, that power, water, sewer, cable, phone, all of that. And so, as a developer, they hit a threshold on the cost of acquiring the dirt to where those costs of bringing in the infrastructure just don't pencil out in the end.
So then why do you spend $25,000 buying them?
So this is an adjacent property owner. I don't want to speculate why they want to buy these properties. if it were me, I would be buying them to create a piece big enough to build something on. And that may be what they're trying to do, but we have not asked that question.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
So that'll be either C or D, whatever
The
he
new item.
lays it out.
Yeah.
And then we'll look at the one in the middle there, which is COVID Local Fiscal Recovery Fund 1940, and that's
Yeah.
a Robin item.
Yeah, for your consideration is, okay, Robin, is to create a new fund where we're gonna be putting all the American Rescue Plan Act money. And I know that at the beginning, staff, through myself, provided to you that we can probably have that stated on the general fund. But based on the new guidance of the Treasury, we just came back in mid-June, put us in a position to change that recommendation to you, just to make sure that we keep track of every single penny and dollar associated with the American Rescue Plan. This is really an administrative request for you to create this fund. And Robin?
I don't think I have anything to add. You covered it pretty well. We want to be sure that this money is sufficiently tracked and reported appropriately.
No questions.
We discussed this sometime back, but there'd been new direction that came. Is that what's going on here?
Yeah, it's, even when we initially provided to you some recommendations as to how you may consider spending the American Rescue Plan money, some of the recommendations were based on the Treasury guidance that was in place in 2020 from the Coronavirus Relief Fund. And we were under that impression that the same guidance will be provided. But in mid-June, the Treasury changed everything related to this plan. So we're in the position right now to revisit every single recommendation that we provided to you, and this is one of them. And this is really going to give us the opportunity to make sure that we meet the guidance, the new guidance the Department of Treasury provided, not just to Thurston County, but across the country in mid-June. And so we need to take a couple of steps back. So what that has not changed, and you already taken an action, is related to support of local businesses, Thurston Strong, as well as the local nonprofits with United Way. I believe you took affirmative action last week. So those core elements have not changed in the new guidance. It's the other elements that we need to make sure that we bring a good proposal for you that meets the new guidance.
They must have been listening to our meetings or something.
To me, I absolutely extremely disappointed because even when we were here on the national level, how this American Rescue Plan was coming is going to provide a lot of flexibility to local jurisdictions as to how we're going to be able to utilize this money. Well, lo and behold, the new guidance is even more restrictive from what we had in 2020. And Robin just came back from a conference in which this was a focal point of that. And it is not just about the Thurston County is changing, and shifting gears in this. It's just every single local jurisdiction in the country that needs to take a couple of steps back and see how we're going to be able to meet the new guidance of the U.S. Department of Treasury. So, long answer to your question, Commissioner.
I guess I thought that maybe they were allowing certain other things to happen. I don't know, purchasing property for homeless, police expenditure, some of those kind of things. I keep hearing about that in the national media from the President Biden's administration, I think, but that's not quite there yet.
Well, as far as I know, that's what we need to. We're gathering a list of proposals of expenditures for you to consider. They may include some of those elements that you described.
Will we be going over that at some point?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay.
Because we need to bring that, obviously you need to make a decision on that. And I'm sure it's gonna be a couple of sessions. Just give us some time
Okay.
to package this on a
Thank
better
you.
format.
Last item under consent is the auditor's voucher list, which we will see shortly. Item 4A, is an auditor item, interlocal agreement with Jefferson County for election facilities.
This particular item is for you to consider as a mutual aid agreement with Jefferson County related to elections. In this related case of the continuing operations plan the auditor's office has in place. And in case of an emergency, hopefully nothing to that extreme, we're gonna be able to cooperate with Jefferson County as to how we can mutually help each other. You may ask why Jefferson County and other counties. We just have, the Jefferson County has the same system that Thurston County has in terms of elections. And that seems to be very seamless as to how we can probably partner on this, interlocal agreement. In other counties, they don't have the same system. It will be extremely difficult in case of an emergency for us to utilize and partner to help each other on that.
And is this a re-up of agreement we've already had?
No, this is a brand new one.
This is new. Any questions from the board?
I guess my question would be, when would this agreement be implemented if we approve it?
In the event of an emergency, there is
Right, but the authorization to go ahead with it, are you planning on presenting an EAS?
Yeah, it is for your next week's agenda.
It's next week, and that, can have a start point, I see it until 2026.
Yeah, so that's the end of the, yeah.
From whenever we sign off on it?
Yeah.
This is start point.
No money or anything? I mean,
No, there's
just-
no financial transaction.
Just
It's
an
a mutual-
availability.
Yeah, mutual aid agreement for cooperation. At some point may be a financial transaction, but that is difficult to determine at this point. But this is the instrument that allows for that cooperation in case of an emergency.
I guess my biggest question about the whole thing is I thought that our election systems was, at least the portion of counting votes and all that was a standalone system. I'd hate to see us enter into an agreement that gave an outside line to wherever. I guess so I'm not up on it, but I'd kind of like to hear more from Mary Hall about it, to be honest with you, about how this is not going to affect election security or anything. It's my understanding we're not hooked up with other
No, we're not, but
servers or
Jefferson
users.
County used the same system.
I know, but how do you do that if you don't have a connection between those two? You know, some type of a internet line or.
Beauty of working in the cloud.
Yeah.
You can access your part of the cloud from anywhere.
And flash drives are always helpful.
Yeah.
Boy,
But I'm
it's
sure Mary
way
can
out
tell
of
you.
my area.
I'm sure Mary could explain it.
Yeah, Mary can
Yeah.
explain. I can ask Mary to
I
come.
mean, there's
I
no
believe
rush
she's-
on it. Why not? Let's hear from the auditor about it.
No, it's for next week. This is not for today.
Yeah, but I mean, so she
Yeah,
can.
I will ask Mary to come next Tuesday morning when you review this agenda. If I believe she's out of the office this week, but if not, somebody from the other's office.
I'm sure Diana or
Yeah.
Tilly
Yeah.
would be able to.
Yeah.
Can I?
Okay.
Yeah, because I know the auditor's always on top of election security, so.
Right.
Be good to hear that. Good, okay, so item 5A is central services. Bid award for Thurston County Corrections Facility Roof and Siding Repair. I know we've seen this one before in some form or other.
You review this item when you authorize going for a bidding process. In this particular case, where your consideration is to award the contract to Roof Toppers Incorporated of Vancouver, Washington. On July 12, 2021, the county received two bids. And the result of that process, the apparent low bidder is again Roof Toppers Incorporated of Vancouver, Washington. In the amount of $319,082.69, which includes sales tax and 10% contingency. This particular item will ask for you to approve the contract and authorize the assistant county manager to execute the terms of that contract. And the funding coming from this particular, for this particular project comes from the building reserves, as stated on the previous meeting when you heard this item.
Okay, we've got Capital Project Manager, Mariusz Kowalewski. Welcome. And is this Is this bid like consistent with like your estimate of what it might cost, or where did that come in?
So I have to report that we had engineer estimation, which was higher than the lowest bidder, and the next bidder was $250,000 higher practically. So we have really low bid in current market situation. I was very worrying about this project because we designed this 2 years ago, and we had engineer estimations which were then current, but with market developments, this project really is costing much more than we were hoping for. So bottom line is that I created bid alternates to allow me to actually come on budget with this project. And right now what I'm having is with soft cost, still keep this under $350,000. The only option I have to consider is to provide metal cladding on dormers. I have 4 dormers, and I have structure built in ways that I can clad each dormer with unit cost. So practically, if I will be having no change orders, then I can deliver this whole project on budget and make this good. If there will be change order, I'll have to probably stop with 1 dormer. Don't do it. But I'm asking board to allow me to control costs by being quite aware as a contractor is working, and my plan is to have no change orders if possible.
So I have not had an opportunity to review this contract. It had been on today's agenda, and I asked to have it delayed till next week so that I can review the contract and ensure that we can complete the work within this bid. I have concerns because the bid did come in higher than we had anticipated. Just in general, and I think you've heard this from Jennifer too, we're seeing the price of construction is going up tremendously. So I want to take a look at this contract, ensure that it is for the entire project and that we do have sufficient budget before the board votes on it. So that's why it's on for next week, and Mariusz is talking about alternatives.
I didn't understand what you mean, the 4 dormers? What?
They're like skylight, sort of, on the roof of the corrections facility. We have 4, and I truly can't tell you a whole lot more than that, other than they need to be repaired.
Okay.
So give us an opportunity to really dig into this contract. It's on my list of things I need to chat with Romero about later today, and we'll come back with a more solid answer for you.
Just to make this clear, we are talking about stucco replacement with metal cladding. Stucco or IFIS does not work in our climate, and happens that this project on the roof has those clear stories, dormers or lanterns, which are covered with stucco on 3 sides. And intention is to replace the stucco with metal paneling, exactly what we had to do with FJC before. And this is the objective in this project, to provide cladding which will last at least 15-20 years.
Stucco is the issue, right? Doesn't
Yes.
hold up.
Apparently what was
Needs to be
used at the
met.
time it was built.
Somebody
And
didn't
it's
realize
not
that at the time it was
that
built.
somebody did something, and now we've got to fix it.
As you heard, when the board discussed this, when you're considering issuing the bids, this has been a lot of maintenance and a lot of that money is spent in try to do an operational fix. It just is not working, so hopefully this will provide a permanent fix to the issue.
Right.
All right, more to come next week.
Yep.
Thank you, Mariusz.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so 6A, Budget Stabilization Fund 0011.
Yeah, this for consider. I believe you had a conversation last week. The board would like to have this as a department item as opposed to normally under consent. And this is follow-up to the board's decision to create this stabilization fund. This is the administrative action to actually create the fund itself, where the stabilization fund will be located.
Questions?
Yeah, is this the $2 million that is gonna go into that fund, or
No.
is this just creating the ability to have the fund?
This just creates the fund. It does not transfer the money. That action was taken in your budget amendment. This simply creates a fund to put the money into.
And is that part of what's going to be reviewed by the Superior Court? A citizen appeal to the Superior Court? Apparently that something was filed yesterday.
Yes, I'll have an executive session for you to have that conversation next Tuesday.
So before we make any decisions, we'll hear more about that. Is that what I'm hearing?
And again, this is an administrative process to create a fund. I believe what you're referring to, the citizen filing a claim against the county, is on the overall budget amendment.
I don't know if it's a claim against the county. I don't look at it as litigation as much as I look at it as a continuation of a process that's laid out in law. So I guess that's where we're at, right?
Well, I respect your perspective, Commissioner. We'll have an executive session next week for the
okay.
board to discuss this.
Okay. I'm good for now.
Item 7, Public Health and Social Services, Consolidated Homeless Grant and Housing Essential Needs Revenue Contract.
Thank you, Commissioners. Let me give you a little bit of a background on this. On June 15, 2021, the Board of County Commissioners approved 37 housing contracts based on the Regional Housing Council recommendations through a request for proposals process. Portions of that contract, those contracts were funded by the what we call is the Consolidated Homeless Grant and Housing Essential Needs. And the awards for those particular organizations who were to receive those funds were contingent to having the state provide the funding. So this particular item is for you to consider having a contract with the Washington State Department of Commerce for the fiscal year 2022-2023 to receive $9,159,975, and again to fund the county homeless programs and services. They have been authorized they have been awarded through the Regional Housing Council. Do you want to add anything else to that, Tom?
Good morning again, Commissioners. Tom Webster with Public Health and Social Services. So I just clarify that this is a 2-year contract. So this is for the next 2 fiscal years. This, the Consolidated Homeless Grant funding is in line with what we expected for the, when we made those initial awards. The HEN, the Housing and Essential Needs funding, is actually substantially higher than we received in previous years. It's approximately $1 million per year more than we received in previous years. And that funding funds Housing and Essential Needs supports rental assistance for very specific populations. So these funds are in line with what we expected, if not an increase over what we expected, but it is a 2-year contract.
And
I'm happy to answer any questions.
Is this a continuation of existing funding policies from the past?
Yeah, so these are funds that we receive every 2 years. The states, as part of their budget, issues these funds. So these are funds that we have received for many, many years. And it's just a new contract from the state with the latest round of funding.
Thank you.
Okay, let's take a break. It's 10:23. We'll reconvene at 10:35, pick up with item 7B.
Okay.
We're live, Commissioner.
All right, thank you. We're back. It's 10:36 a.m. We're picking up with our Board of County Commissioners agenda setting work session. We're in the middle of item 4, which is review of next week's proposed agenda for the board meeting. And we are left off with 7B, which is a public health and social services item, amendment to Interfaith Works contract for non-congregate shelter bed program.
Yeah,
Tom Webster is still with us.
Yeah, Commissioners, a little more background on this. As a result of the pandemic, we have been operating, providing non-congregate shelter alternatives for those who have been diagnosed and exposed by the virus, and for those who don't have the option to quarantine at home. So this is, Interfaith Works has been the outfit who has helped us to support those efforts and the non-congregate shelter activities related to the COVID-19 emergency. So there is a need to continue to provide those services in the long term until December 31st, at least, 2021. And at that point, we'll see how the whole pandemic is evolving or not. So there is a little bit of nuance on this. This particular activities will be supposed to be funding 100% by FEMA. And but by itself, we need to make an argument that in fact those are eligible activities. And we're in the process of making sure that we submit that application to FEMA to get reimbursed 100% for those activities. We feel pretty confident that that will be the case, but in the meantime, we need to make sure that we bridge the expenditures of this until we get that reimbursement from FEMA, because those activities and those they needs to continue on until December 31st of this year. So this item, what it does is, for your consideration, is to increase the current contract that we have with Interfaith Works for an additional $225,000 for a total cost of $852,926. The $225,000, we're going to be using the local document recording fees to, I believe, bridge over until we get the reimbursement from FEMA related to those activities. That's in a nutshell what this item is. Tom, can you add additional information or perhaps correct what I just stated?
Yeah, good morning again, Commissioners. So that was a good summary. A couple things to add and perhaps clarify is Interfaith Works. So this is a little different than our quarantine and isolation facility, but Interfaith Works is looking to work with both Providence and hopefully Multi-Care Capital Medical Center to fund 6 respite beds. So these are for unsheltered individuals who may be released from emergency room or hospital, who are ready to be released but are not quite ready to need some additional support. And so what this program would be is to set up 6 respite beds in a hotel where those patients and clients can continue their recovery to receive support from Interfaith Works, as well as support from nurses from Providence Hospital. So this was an eligible activity under the FEMA Public Assistance Program. We've been looking for an opportunity to utilize the FEMA PA funds to receive the 100% reimbursement for these types of activities. We've been working with Interfaith in Providence for several months to kind of come up with this program. And so that's what we're looking to use these funds to do for the next 6 months. And we anticipate that this should be eligible under the FEMA program, but it will take several months potentially before we receive that official determination from FEMA.
Commissioner Edwards has a question.
So the intent is to reimburse that document recording fee fund when you get money back from FEMA? Is that kind of what we're doing here?
That's correct. So one of the things we've done is, as we just, the previous item, we received some additional money from under the HEN program. So which can be used to support our coordinated entry system. So we're using some of that additional HEN funding to support, and that frees up this 2163 or document recording fee funding for this activity. But once we receive reimbursement from FEMA, we will reimburse the 2163 fund. We will reimburse the 2163 fund with these funds.
When, in the past, have we been utilizing that hotel down in Tumwater for this?
That has been for the quarantine and isolation facility, which will be a separate program for this. So these will not be for quarantine and isolation, but these are for individuals being released from hospital who are vulnerable to COVID and need some extra care. So they are not specifically for COVID positive patients. This is separate than the quarantine and isolation facility.
You mentioned some of the local medical providers, and those folks are gonna do on-site visits or something with those beds that are purchased? Is that where the medical care is coming in?
Yeah, so these are folks who have been released for hospital. So yes, there's a partnership between Providence and Interfaith. Interfaith will provide the daily kind of on-site management and support these folks, make sure they have access to their medicine. But there will be, my understanding from Providence is they will send a nurse periodically who will be available to support with perhaps changing of bandages or other kind of low-level medical attention that these patients or these clients may require.
And how many of these patients have we dealt with so far under, similar type of process, I guess?
So this has been an ongoing challenge for our homeless crisis response system as general. So I don't have a specific number for you, but it is not uncommon for someone to be released from hospital medical care and they are dropped off or they show up at an Interfaith Works or Union Gospel Mission, and it's clear that they need kind of ongoing medical attention, or they need, they may have medicine that they need, antibiotics that need to be refrigerated, that if they're released into kind of an unsheltered encampment, do not have an ability to do the necessary medical follow-up to fully recover. So there has been an ongoing challenge with folks being released. They no longer need the full-time kind of hospital stay, but they need some additional medical assistance. And so this is trying to bridge that gap that we've seen throughout our community in the past. So I don't have a specific number for you, but we do hear from shelter providers and others that they not infrequently see folks being released from hospitals that need additional medical attention.
And so far, I guess up to today's date, we've spent $625,000 dealing with this particular issue?
So the current contract we're amending with Interfaith Works is to support their current shelter program. So we'd be amending their existing contract to expand the scope of work to include this respite bed program and to provide this funding. So the current contract we're looking to amend is for operations for their regular shelter.
I guess
so. This would be an expansion of their shelter program specifically for these respite beds.
I wouldn't be interested in specific numbers, but is there any way we could have a general idea of, are we going to have 6 beds full every day, or how many, when I say how many have we've helped, I don't know, 20, 30, 70? I'm just kind of curious so we know where we're spending the taxpayers' money, that's all.
Yeah, and we have, so I will happy to kind of do some research and get more specifics for you next week. But I will say we've in conversations with both Providence and Interfaith that Providence is confident that they have sufficient clients that these beds will be full. We expect that clients will be kind of in these beds for probably 2 to 4 weeks as an average or typical stay as folks before they're released. But in conversations with Providence and other providers, that there's strong confidence that these beds will be filled with clients.
So this is actually transitional housing for medical purposes, though. And then after that, they're moved out. They're not staying there long-term.
Correct. This is not intended to be permanent or long-term. This is, intended to help people recover after a medical attention care. So it is intended to be temporary housing as they are able to fully recover from their medical issue.
Is it COVID driven or just any medical issue?
It is not COVID specific. It could be any medical issue, but these are folks who are deemed, because of their medical condition, are deemed particularly vulnerable to COVID if they were to contract it.
Okay, thank you.
Anything, Commissioner?
No, sir.
Okay.
Thank you for the clarification, Tom. Appreciate it.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
we covered most of my questions there. Okay, 7C is interlocal cooperation agreements and memorandums of understanding for community development block grant or CDBG urban county entitlement funds. Jacinda Stolches.
Yeah, commissioners, let me just frame the item. And this is, as you may recall, the county is considered to be an urban county in the last few years with have exercised the community development block grant program, CDBG money. That is that we receive as a county, except for the City of Olympia. The City of Olympia receives their own CDBG funding. And we have developed over the last few years as to we take turns. That yearly allocation goes from the City of Olympia, the City of Lacey, City of Tumwater, and then goes to the South County. Later on the agenda, I have an update of the CDBG projects the county funded a couple of years ago. So, and that has been the process as to how we have allocated the CDBG money. When it goes to the City of Lacey, the City of Tumwater, they themselves have that process to determine where the CDBG money will be allocated depending on the criteria of the CDBG grant. And when it comes to the county manager represents the South County and has a conversation with the mayors from the South cities as to how we are going to distribute the money related to pretty much low-income activities in projects. So here's the time they will need to renew those contracts. And as you may recall, perhaps you may recall, the City of Lacey became a qualified city. They can probably receive their own CDBG money allocation similar to the City of Olympia. So that created a little bit of an interesting process because unless something has changed in the last couple of weeks, if the City of Lacey would have gone on their own, then perhaps the county itself and the South cities will not be able to meet that urban threshold requirement. I have some good news to share. The City of Lacey, as I just got an email this morning stating they are planning to be part of the normal process. So they are going to be part of the overall county process. They will have been implemented over the last, I believe, 6 years. And so that's good news. So now we can still receive the same amount of CDBG money on the yearly basis, and we'll continue to approach the same on a rotation basis. Every year they will go with City of Lacey, City of Tumwater, and then we'll go to the county in coordination with the cities of South County. So
Do we know their thinking on that? I mean, was it gonna be true that did we know for sure that we weren't gonna qualify without them?
Tom can answer specifically that question, but my understanding at that point is if something has changed, that would be good, but my understanding that perhaps the county would not have been eligible without the City of Lacey. Tom, is that the case?
Yeah, so Jacinda can jump in. So we did hear from HUD that there was a question about that, and we were concerned because we would drop below the threshold. But HUD did inform us that we would have remained in urban county even if Lacey had dropped out, that we were, there was a clause in there. So long story short, we were concerned about that, but it was determined that we would have remained in urban county even if Lacey did drop out.
Oh,
but fortunately they did not.
But the funding would drop.
Will be reduced, yeah.
Yes, the funding would have been reduced.
But now with
Less funding that we would have probably alternated with Tumwater, for example,
yes,
every other year.
but it will be a much less funding. But I'm glad the City of Lacey Council decided to be part of the larger region, and it will be for the county and the south cities will be every 3 years. They will have this dollar amount be distributed. So but going back to this item, is really for you to authorize for the chair of the Board of County Commissioners to sign those MOUs. They will continue to be part of the process that we have exercised in the last few years.
So this item is basically a sigh of relief.
Well, when I was reading this item last night, I was like, okay, how am I going to be presenting this to the board without having that? Just this morning, I got an email from staff confirming that the city of Lacey has decided to remain. So good news.
No question.
No questions?
All right, great, good news. 7D is Thurston Mason County Developmental Disabilities Millage Levy Interlocal Agreement.
Thank you, commissioners. This is related to the 2.5 cents per $1,000 valuation that is put into the property tax that every single citizen pays. And this is related to RCW 71.20110, which is what we call is the millage funding.
Could you state that number again?
The RCW?
Yeah, please.
RCW 71.20.110.
Thank you.
And this is the millage funding that is specifically related to support, improve, and increase services available to individuals with developmental disabilities. This particular contract, this particular items is to approve an interlocutor room with Mason County, because we provide those services also in Mason County to utilize the millage funding. We have been implementing this particular program with Mason County since, I don't remember the last time, since 1980, I believe. And this particular proposal it will go a new interlocutor agreement that will take us all the way to the next 5 years, from 2022 to 2027. Annalise is here to add additional context to this item.
Good morning again, commissioners.
And this is an ongoing agreement that we've had in place since the 80s. We do what? We renew it every 5 years or something?
Yeah,
or-
that is correct, sir.
And the Mason County folks, they're paying 2.5, the same as we're paying 2.5.
Yeah, it's the same millage funding they have.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything to add, Annalise?
Only that I added some additional documentation that just kind of talks about some of the services that we've provided over time. You're more than welcome to review those if you haven't already, or again, we can just discuss that next week during our presentation.
Okay.
No new taxes.
Yeah.
No new taxes,
Yeah,
just a
the same.
continuation of a program. Okay.
Perfect, thank you. Item 8 is Public Works Master Interlocal Agreement with City of Lacey for Transportation Services.
This is similar to other contracts that the board has in local agreements they have exercised with other jurisdictions. This mutually aid coordination, in this case is with the City of Lacey, for road maintenance activities that each jurisdiction can partner. It has a threshold of maximum of $300,000 per year, and again, it works both ways. It's just a cooperation agreement with the City of Lacey. We have similar agreements with the City of Tumwater, and I believe we also have agreements with the City of Olympia as well. And that serves a very good way to how we can cooperate with the local jurisdictions that provide those services. There is not any specific items associated with this particular interlocutor agreement. It just says the threshold of $300,000 a year, and when the need arises, this instrument will allow us to exercise the cooperation with the jurisdictions.
Commissioner Edwards.
Is this, I'm gonna just try to come up with an example. Lacey annexed the area over by Marvin and Stillicum, I think. So, and I know there's construction going on over there now. I don't know exactly what they're doing, but are they doing that project that we were stopped from doing some time back because of the gopher? You're not doing that? That's not what's going on?
No, I don't think that's, you want to speak about that?
I can speak to that. No,
Come on up, Matt.
Come to the podium, Matt.
I got you here.
You got it here, might as well make use of it.
And introduce yourself.
My name is Matt Unsman, Thurston County Traffic Engineer. It's been a year and a half. It's great to be back.
Thank you.
Hey,
Who's
so-
counting?
So, I think the project you're referring to is the fire station. Just recently remodeled, and they're doing their furniture improvements right now. But you are correct that Lacey took, Stillicum Road from the state route almost all the way to, Dederow Road. It stops about a couple hundred feet before you get to Dederow.
So is this the kind of thing that kind of fills in some voids there? I'm trying to figure out how come, I'm all for partnerships, but
Let me
how
give
does
you
it all
some-
work for the benefit of the taxpayers?
So let me give you a selfish example. I'm overseeing the traffic operations group, right? And so we only have 10 signals in the county that we maintain. Well, the city of Lacey and Olympia, they got, I don't know, 70, 80. So it doesn't make sense for us to maintain those 10 signals. We just work with the local cities to maintain those for us. But it goes the other way too. We have more than 1,000 miles of roads to paint every year. So we're set up for striping operations. So that's when we can actually buy paint.
That's all
We,
I know.
We'll stripe for the local cities as well.
So I was gonna basically just ask transportation services, like what does it mean? It sounds like it's just kind of anything and everything.
Maintenance, yeah.
Maintenance
And we
activity.
can jump on contracts too. So like, say the city of Lacey's doing an overlay project. Last year, they were doing an overlay project on Meridian Road. So they were gonna overlay their portion of Meridian Road. What this allowed us to do is to work with the city of Lacey to get our portion of Meridian Road overlaid as well. It's a win-win.
No, it sounds good. Just thank you for the education piece.
Okay. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you very much. Don't go away though.
Yeah.
Oh, no, they're waiting for the upcoming topic here.
Okay, so we've got, that's the last business item. We've got commission reports and county manager reviewing combined schedule. And then we will get to, that'll be the end of next Tuesday's board meeting. So item 5 this morning is proclamations and awards.
Good morning, Amy Davis, Clerk of the Board. The draft proclamation for Farmers Market Week is included in your packet. Again, I've sent inquiries to the contacts of the Olympia, Tenino, and Yelm farmer markets and Wilford Tumwater as well. And I'm happy to reach out to anyone else you may want invited.
And then the next one I see is August 31st.
Yes.
So we've got a little bit of a break there. Okay, good. Any questions for Amy on? All right, then let's go to item 6, advisory boards and commissions.
The Hotel and Motel Commission has unanimously nominated Adam Martinez, owner of the Hampton Inn on Martin Way, to the commission for their one vacancy. The recommendation letter is attached, and just a reminder that the appointment is made in the individual's name, not as the business. So with your approval, we can include this appointment on next week's agenda. And I wasn't sure, Robin, if you had anything to add regarding the contract with the TPA.
Sure. The agreement that the county has with the TPA is that they will forward a name to the Board of County Commissioners, and you will appoint the name, the person that they forward to you. So it's, that's part of the deal. I also know that it's very difficult for them to find new group members, so there's a lot of strings attached to who they choose.
Yeah, I sit on the TPA as an ex officio member, and I know that they've been searching because they haven't really been able to meet quorum and they don't have enough members. So I'm glad that if I found someone else to join the ranks.
Sounds like we're good to go.
Thank you.
All right, good. Takes care of that one. Let's go to PIO check-in. Megan Porter.
Good morning, Commissioners. Megan Porter, Public Information Supervisor. I have no updates for you this morning.
No updates?
No updates.
Okay. Okay, then we're up to item 8, traffic impact fee follow-up from a public hearing on July 13th.
Come on up. You want to take the side chair?
No, probably you sit next to him.
Yeah. Commissioners, you held a public hearing related to the update on the traffic impact fees last Tuesday, July 13, 2021. The staff is going to walk you through a little bit in review what the public testimony was provided to you, and then I will offer a couple of steps moving forward for your consideration after staff is completed this.
Good evening, Commissioners. Once again, good to be back. So last week I presented to you an overview of our traffic impact fee program. I'm not going to get into the technical details today, but I think the big takeaway is staff presented a recommended 50% reduction to traffic impact fee rates. Public testimony received, we received 2 not in favor of the 50% reduction. They would like to see 100% of the full maximum defensible impact fee charged. And then we received comment from one individual who supported impact fees but didn't necessarily feel like it needed to be 50%.
So you may recall, the proposal included a couple of exceptions. It was in addition to the 50% reduction, the board moved forward on the public hearing process. Included exemptions and reduction in the fees related to ADUs, as well as the low-income housing. And the low-income housing was 80%, in the ADUs, I believe, was a reduction to 50%.
Of the single family.
In the single.
Of the single family.
Of the single family. And that was an interesting conversation because the ADUs was no part of that, and that really will give a way as to how staff here in the county can implement those fees when they come in. So during the public process, I made you aware of the substitute House Bill 1331. And the substitute House Bill 1331 is related to impact fees. And what this bill does is allows the legislative authority to exempt child care centers from traffic impact fees. And there's a little bit of nuances of this new law that will take place July 25th, 2021. It gives the authority to the legislative authority, gives the option to the legislative authority to reduce the traffic impact fees for up to 80% for childcare centers that you can probably exercise. Also allows for you to consider a reduction of 100% of the for childcare services of traffic impact fees, as long as the childcare centers provide 25% of their services for those children and families who are using subsidized child care center by the state. So up to 80% under this bill, with my words, no strings attached, up to 100% reduction if the provider sets aside 20% of children and families. They may be using subsidies for those services from the state. So a couple of steps forward, I believe the board is interested in supporting child care centers as to how we can probably help the implementation, because child care is a big issue, not just here in Thurston County. It's an issue across the state and across the nation. And my suggestion to you is to consider a couple of options moving forward related to the childcare centers. There is, could be an option for you to consider bringing I believe, an ordinance for next Tuesday. Will you be considering implementing the childcare exemption for up to 80%? They will take effect on July 27th, and that will be 2 days after the new law takes place. In the same terms, on the existing fees, you can probably include the low-income housing exception, which is also up to 80% on the same ordinance. Or we can bring that resolution of the new fees that we can include the exception down the road as well when you approve the overall revisions of the fees, when you will be considering approving the overall revisions. So there's a couple of paths that I'm offering to you, and this is in response to, I believe, the board's desire and intent to support the childcare centers. And I believe we have one that is right now on this position of the traffic impact fees. And we have asked the applicant to hold off until at least the board has the opportunity to take an action related to the new law. That is the where we are at this point. My suggestion to you will be for you to consider bringing an ordinance to implement the exceptions for the child care in alignment to the new law of the Substitute House Bill 1331. They will take effect next week if the board approves that, and those exceptions will be in place at that time. And also you may consider also including the low-income housing. So when that passes, if you approve them, the new fees will include those exceptions when you take an action on implementing those traffic impact fees. But we can probably bring that resolution next week as well. So it will be 2 actions that you may consider. Is that clear enough, muddy enough?
So process-wise, this has been a very frustrating issue in my opinion. This is the 3rd year of working on it, and I think the fact that it's got all these different nuances has contributed to it getting kind of strung along. So you got us to where we are now by kind of being very precise and saying there's 4 decision points the board needs, and now we've added a 5th with daycare. So I think we just need to walk through, do we update the project list? Do we adopt 50% or 60% or 100% or whatever? How do we deal with ADUs? How do we deal with low income? And how do we deal with daycare? And we just need to make those decisions systematically. I have a little wrinkle about ADUs that I'd like to talk about. I don't know if now's the right time, but.
Absolutely.
Okay, so on ADUs, one thing that I came up against is what is the definition of an ADU? We got into detached and attached, but apparently there's another kind of ADU that they call internal, where you're not even adding to you're not really attaching anything. You're just you're reconfiguring the space within the existing footprint of the home, which might be for purposes of bringing someone else in, or it might be just your son's older and living at home and needs a little more privacy, or it might be you're separated from your husband and you guys want separate living quarters. It might be for any 1,000 different reasons. So I guess I'm wondering, now that I realize that that is an ADU, I would like to ask the board or kind of discuss whether or not that is a situation that would be appropriate to handle differently and potentially exempt from impact fees altogether, or take it out of the definition of what an ADU is, whatever is least less complicated. But I see an argument there for that really not. I mean, if you think of all the different scenarios that would create that situation, I think some of them might create more traffic impact, but probably most of the majority would not. Versus when you're expanding your home in some way, creating, because I couldn't really figure out, well, what's the difference between a remodel and an ADU to begin with? And Josh and Brett tried to explain something about creating, I don't know, I didn't really get a sense of what the bright line was. Is it creating an external entrance? Is it creating new plumbing of some kind? I mean, where's the where's the trigger that now it's an ADU, not just a remodel? I was looking at a project where they were reducing the number of bedrooms. In theory, there could be less people living there based on the new configuration of space, but it was being treated as an ADU, being hit with impact fees. And I just didn't think that made very much sense. So there might be some nuance to put. We started with this process where we had no ADU policy and it was being handled haphazardly at the counter. We're trying to be methodical, and it just seems like maybe there's a nuance to overlay in what we do with ADUs. Yeah, go ahead.
I am aware of that example. I have touched base with Josh, Jennifer, because I shared with you from their seller's perspective, if in previous surface the roof line is not increased, what is the difference between a remodel versus an ADU?
Internal ADU.
Internal ADU. And why with those actions, a remodel versus an ADU triggers environmental health review or traffic impact fees, right? Because from NASAR's perspective, it doesn't really make much sense. But when the board approves the ADU a few months ago, that was good action. Perhaps it may be an opportunity for us to provide a proposal for you to start defining what that internal ADU is, whether it's considered or not. I don't think that conversation should be part of the traffic impact fees, because that will narrow down that particular example that you're relying to, because it's more than just the traffic impact fees that particular applicant was exposed to.
So you're talking about kind of what I said about redefining what an ADU is,
So,
then it would apply to all categories.
I think the conversation needs to be done on a different area, not just the impact fees, because the impact fees is just one element. So that will be my suggestion, maybe to have a conversation, larger context, whether we can there's an opportunity to redefine the ADU ordinance that you passed a few months ago. Certainly is an opportunity, and we can probably bring that for your proposal. But addressing at the traffic impact fees maybe too much of a lower level.
I guess I just want to follow up on that. I really don't think we ought to be in the business of micromanaging families, and if they want to bring a mother-in-law in or not, or I hate to see the government get into that minutia of family living to where we even need to discuss that. But that's okay. I get it. It looks like we're not going to discuss it now, so I'll leave it alone.
You're absolutely correct, Commissioner. And I guess what I'm saying is sometimes we bring proposals to the board, and there's a lot of nuances within that context. It brings to the surface an opportunity to change a little bit what you pass. So give us some time to bring that to a resolution.
So why don't you walk us through the decisions we need to make, and if we need to stop and have discussion at each point, that's fine. But I just want to be methodical about this, because it's easy to get turned in circles.
So the public hearing that you received public testimony on last week is addresses fundamental issues. The traffic impact fees are based on a project list. In a project list in 7 different regions as we established here in the county. And that project list absolutely has a cost. And that cost is distributed among the what we call is the traffic modeling. Sometimes it's not all the development that occurs in a specific area. Every single development will pay for the improvements of the road projects that we have outlined on those areas. Is more about the traffic modeling, meaning a project on area 1 could generate traffic to many different areas in the county because of the traffic patterns. And that's how the traffic impact fees are stated. So it's not all inclusive. An area within the traffic impact fees, we have 2 projects, and all the development that occurs in that area is going to be fully footing the bill of those improvements. That doesn't work that way. because the traffic distribution is across the county. And that makes sense, because prior to the traffic impact fee, it was more of development impact fees that we had in place. And the development impact fees addresses specific impacts to those specific developments, and just paid a portion of that, which didn't give us the ability to build those improvements because some of the contributions of the developers at that time were so minimum that it became impossible or difficult for the county. So the legislature gave, years ago, this is probably in place over 15 years ago, they implemented the traffic impact fees, which allows the management of all the development impact fees for local jurisdictions to better utilize to build those improvements. Since the county implemented those traffic impact fees, many projects have been completed. In many projects, so it is a need to, first of all, change and update the project list in which the traffic impact fees are developed. And also there is a need to revise the impact fees based on the new improvements, road improvements that we have identified in those areas. That is really the gist of it, because absent of not updating the project list, we're gonna be running the risk. We'll continue to apply traffic impact fees for some projects that we have already been completed. So for your consideration, there's a couple of things, is updated the project list that I believe needs to be done. Secondly, implement the new traffic impact fees, and with a 50% reduction as proposed to you, including the exceptions for the ADUs, including the exceptions for affordable housing, low-income housing, and the childcare centers.
I need to ask something as we're going here, if that's okay.
Yep.
When was the last time these fees were changed?
2010.
2012.
2012.
2012, okay.
So it's
Go
been
ahead.
quite some time. So,
And then just the first piece, the net result of the project list update is that results in a sort of the maximum defensible fee that then you're kind of keen on. And we had a consultant help us developing all of that.
So please remember that even the current traffic impact fees has the 50% reduction.
Right.
So the revised project list that results in the revised traffic impact fees, the suggestion to you is to consider also the 50% reduction from the defensible rates that we have. And we provided to you how we compare with the local jurisdictions, both with other counties, and we just apart on the traffic impact fees. So the suggestion is for you to consider that through a resolution that will take effect January 1st, 2022.
But we're gonna.
Right. So that is the action, that is the testimony that you received based on the public hearing last week, what it just stated to you. Updated project list, traffic impact fees of 50%, exceptions on the ADU, exceptions on the childcare, and exception to low-income housing. The next item that just materialized is how you can consider helping childcare centers right now, and not wait until January 1st, 2022. And that is the ordinance that I'm proposing for you to consider, that we could bring that next Tuesday for you to exercise your legislative authority in accordance to the new law, substitute House Bill 1331, to implement exceptions to childcare centers and low-income housing on the current fees today, and that will take effect July 27, 2022. So that is the stopgap for you to consider until the new fees will take effect January 1st, 2022. Did I miss anything?
Questions on that proposal?
No.
No? Okay.
No, I don't think I have any on that, but I have some that kind of
Go ahead.
on the periphery.
Yeah, go ahead.
Even if we were to do a 50% reduction as recommended by staff, it sounds like everybody's getting a break, but in actuality, it's a very slight increase, isn't it?
Some
as
areas of the
proposed?
county, the fees will go up slightly, some areas will go down, but on the average, they'll go up slightly countywide.
When you say slightly, I mean, could you say 2%, 6%,
I can-
anything like that?
I
I mean,
can
do
do
you
it
have an
in
idea?
terms of dollars, $200-300. $200-300.
Versus $3,700, for example, or what do you,
So I
what are you
think
comparing
So
that
that's
to?
about 8 to 10%.
7%.
Because the total fee is around 3,000.
Okay, and that would be if we went up the 50%. If we went 40%, maybe people would actually have a reduction to 2% or something, I suppose, or something like that. I mean, I'm just throwing that out. Okay, why, this was a question, I don't know if this is the right time to address this. I asked last week, why the difference of a daycare, using just daycare as the example, why the difference between the South County, and I'm just gonna say, I don't know the numbers, $19 versus North County, $9 or something. And it's just one of the many structures that are laid out, and I think there's 7 or 8 of them, geographical areas. And how that comes about, and then recognizing what the county manager said about it's a larger area than apparently than is addressed in RCW 3992.020, which in part says a direct result of the development. And it sounds like, well, we're gonna have traffic that goes here, there, and everywhere else. But I'll just use South County as an example. A lot of those people, you ask them about going to the north, and they say, I wouldn't go to that cesspool to the north for any amount of money. It's been ruined. We go to Centralia and Chehalis, and that's where we do all of our business. So I'm finding it hard to understand that breakdown of how we're charging those folks as if they're all going to the north. I guess that's what I'm hearing is taking place. And can you explain that a little better? And did you come up with some rational explanation on the child care question I asked last week?
I did not forget your question, Commissioner.
Okay.
So the impact fees, and I thought Ramiro, the county manager, did a very good job of explaining this earlier. Basically, it's the ratio of what the cost of the projects in that service area based upon the number of development or the trips that are generated in that service area. And so with Grand Mound, you have a total project cost of $25 million after we take out all the non-eligible costs. But the problem is that you have a much smaller number of developers, where if you're in the city of Lacey, UGA, you might have a big project list, but you got more developers to absorb that cost. And actually, I should have introduced Daniel and Kendra from Fair and Peers. Please correct me if I said something wrong there.
No, I think that's exactly right, Matt. So it's all about that ratio of project cost to growth. And then the travel model from TRPC also does account, Commissioner, as you were talking about how, people in the South are mostly going to stay in the South. Some small percentage of them may be headed to the North, and so they may be paying their small percentage, their proportional share of the projects in the North. But for the most part, people are paying for projects within their own service area. There's some small percentage that may be headed to the North, but that's all based on the travel demand model.
So just to, I think, simply answer the question, and this applies to all land use types.
Could you introduce yourself to the record?
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Kendra Brayland. I work with Fair and Peers. I work with Daniel. He's just down the hall from me right now. So the development, to kind of answer the question simply, development, depending on where it's occurring in the county, has different infrastructure needs to accommodate it. And I think Matt did a really good job of describing that
there's at different parts of the county, there's different infrastructure needs, and there's different amounts of kind of development to be spreading those costs over. So to answer the question, a daycare in a certain part of the city or a certain part of the county, excuse me, it is more impactful on the transportation system than a daycare in a different part of the county. And that doesn't just isolate just to daycare facilities. That extends to all types of development, since the charge is really being assessed based on the number of vehicle trips that it's generating. And the really neat thing with the new state legislation, as well as the existing state legislation, is that we recognize there are certain types of land uses that maybe we don't want to charge a lot of impact fees to, because they provide benefits to our community, and we want to recognize those benefits by offsetting their impact fees. And so the state legislation, what it allows us to do is still have our structure that is respecting those differential impacts and infrastructure needs in different parts of the county, such that growth is paying for growth, at least partially. But then we're using some of this new state legislation to help offset costs for certain types of very desirable land uses, like low-income housing that makes housing more affordable, and daycare facilities that, as a mom of two, I really recognize that childcare facilities are of critical importance to county residents.
Commissioner Mejia.
So my follow-up question is in regards to that split of the 7 different areas and how they all have different fees associated, or the rate is different. But let's say, I'll use Tenino as an example. Let's say someone in Tenino, pay their impact fees. I mean, it all goes to one pot. So how are we making sure that the money of those, that those people are paying down there are used for projects in that specific area, not used in other places? Because then it's not really applying to that.
Scott, you know the answer to that, right?
Yeah, typically always when we get the money in, it goes into distinct pots of money.
Okay.
And so we do track that and make sure that the money collected for a specific area is only used on projects in that area.
Okay.
And so we track that every year, the revenues coming in, the money going out, and we've got some very sharp financial people that don't let us do that.
Right, it has to be carefully tracked because we're obligated to repay the money to the person that paid it in if we don't use it.
After 10
So,
years.
yeah,
With
after so many
12%
years.
interest a year.
Yeah, we have a limited time, so we have to carefully track that money. We do.
Okay, it's 11:30. We've proven in the last 3 years that we can talk about this issue for hours and hours and hours, and we've done that. But let's try to get to the decision points
So
needed to
that's
move
what
this action forward.
I'm asking the board to provide direction to staff in 2 buckets. The first bucket is for staff to bring a resolution for you to considering adopting the new project list, adopting the new traffic impact fees with 50%, adopting the exceptions for childcare for 80%, adopting the reduction of low-income housing for 80%, and adopting the exception for ADUs. Those
25% of the
25%.
principal.
And those will take effect January 1st, 2022. That's the bucket decision number 1.
Well, I'm not sure I'm in favor of that 50%. That's what I'm trying to figure out yet. I don't want to see any increases during this whole process. That's kind of where I've been at all along. But I want to do something with the child care issue. And I haven't had a good enough explanation, I guess, about those impact fees and where they are spent. And are the rates justified for what we're doing? So where is that all going to fit into this? I mean, I realize it's a democratic process. I can get outvoted, but where will we be going to address some of these issues farther down the road. For an example, Commissioner Mejia brought up the city of Tenino, or maybe the Tenino area, I don't know if it's city or Tenino area, on impact fees, making sure that they're spent there. When they build a home in the city or do a development in the city of Tenino, those impact fees go to the city of Tenino, I take it? They go into this pot?
Well, this is just for unincorporated areas of the county.
Yeah, what we're dealing with, but when somebody moves into the city of Tenino, they pay impact fees, but they go just to the city of Tenino?
If they have a traffic impact fee in the city, I don't know if they have.
SEPA mitigation
Yeah.
too.
So, because that's more complex, let's use the city of Lacey as an example to address your question. The city of Lacey doesn't have traffic impact fees, they have developer fees, for instance. The county has. And there is a lot of traffic generated by the developments from the city of Lacey that affects county infrastructure.
Yeah.
It's just the nature of it. Because if an individual builds a home in the city of Lacey, it is unlikely that those individuals will just travel in the city of Lacey. It's just unrealistic to think everything will be revolving. So the trip generated by that single unit is, I think it's 10 vehicles per day is how we have. So those 10 trips per day that particular development will generate will travel many portions of the county, outside the county and everything else. That's the traffic modeling that we're discussing, because it's a traffic pattern. If an individual lives in Lacey, Tenino, they have to travel, they have to go to the freeway, they have to go through anywhere to even just to grocery shopping. They have to, so they travel those areas. Based on the traffic model, we determine what percentage of that fee will be applied to each of those areas. So that is probably, it will be unrealistic to think if somebody builds within the city of Tenino a home and with the city of Lacey a home, all the fees will be imposed on that area. The majority will be, obviously, but not all of it, because their patterns are different. They have to travel to.
Yeah, and we've got school districts.
I mean, it's just the nature of it, and that applies to any type of development, childcare centers, commercial, anything. It's just, that's how the partners work.
If we're gonna benefit, truly benefit working young people, why don't we just exempt impact fees on childcare?
As I stated, you have the option to exempt up to 100%, but
That comes with strings.
to the developer of the childcare centers, they are the ones who need to set aside 25% capacity. So you have the option to go up to 100%, but the additional 20% will be up to them.
Can we exempt up to 80%?
Yeah, with no strings attached, and that's my proposal.
With no strings attached?
And that's my
Okay,
proposal.
well, that's kind of where I'm at. I'm not sure, I'm with you on impact fees in general at this point in time. I mean, they've been in place since 2012, and my feeling is that during a pandemic is the wrong time to increase any fees. So we're still there. We don't know this new Delta variant or whatever, where it's going. A lot of unknowns that I'm not willing to move on. So
The proposal I have for the board is the first bucket that I just described. What is the pleasure of the board?
It sounds to me like you've got 2 thumbs for bucket 1, and I think 3 thumbs for bucket 2, which is the daycare issue.
Yeah.
Because we all want to take maximum, we want to maximize the benefit of the law to go 80 to 100%.
Yes,
that's correct.
Yes.
So
that's
just to consolidate this conversation, I have a direction from the majority of the board to bring a resolution, hopefully for next week, for you to consider adopting a new project list, adopting a new traffic impact fee with a 50% reduction, adopting an exception for childcare centers up to 80%, adopting an exception for low-income housing up to 80%, and adopting an exception for ADUs. They will take effect on January 1st, 2022. We also are gonna be bringing an ordinance for you for next week, for you to implement exceptions for childcare centers and low-income housing up to 80% for the current fees. They will take effect July 27, 2021, in alignment with the Substitute House Bill 1331. It will take effect July 25th.
Can't do more than that, right? Okay.
Okay? And that last bucket is the majority of the board.
It's unanimous.
Yep.
Yep. On that case. Okay, very good.
Good direction?
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Let's go to Keep Washington Working Act. And I see Elizabeth is here. Is she part of that one?
Yep. Elizabeth, are you there?
Good job explaining that, folks.
Thank you. Elizabeth, are you there? Elizabeth?
Hi, sorry about that.
So, allow me to frame the conversation that you take.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you. Commissioners, this is the result, I believe, on the legislative body who passed mainly the Substitute House Bill 2567 and also the Keep Working Washington Act, as well as the open courts. It's all related to civil arrests near the courthouse facilities. And that was on the heels, I believe, of the ICE arrest. It occurred here in Thurston County. The legislature, after that, passed this particular, the Keep Washington Working Act. This particular act requires for all the jurisdictions to apply and pass policies that will be aligned to the new law. It has been a little bit of a long time coming. We have been coordinating this particular policies, and before you is a red line item of the proposed policies for you to consider. This, not today, this is just an update. We'll bring this item later on for a formal approval after we hear the perspective from Elizabeth as to how these policies have come to this place. It included a lot of perspective and feedbacks for some of the key stakeholders. Elizabeth?
Thank you, Romero. This is, we started having this conversation before COVID hit. And when COVID hit and the courts were shut down, this particular project lost some steam. But since the courts are clearly opening up, all the stakeholders and the stakeholders that are participating in this particular policy is the county commissioners, the Thurston County Sheriff, Superior Court judges, district court judges. And I believe that's it. So what I did to pull together this policy was to start with when the Keep Washington Working Act was passed, they directed the Attorney General's office to come up with a model policy for jurisdictions to either adopt or come up with their own. So we've done a blended policy where we've taken the model policy from the AGO's office. And the document you have in front of you is color-coded. So the lettering in black is taken from the model policy. And then we incorporated the court's perspective on how they wanted to see these principles carried through. Their language is in the green language, green font. And then we also incorporated the sheriff's policies, both the correction facilities policies on how they're dealing with these issues and the patrol issues. rather than change their language, I just pulled their policies into this policy. So it's a very comprehensive policy, and I also suggest, because these independently elected officials are in charge of their staff and everything, that this policy be adopted not only by the board, but by the chief judges of the District Court and Superior Court and the Thurston County Sheriff's Office. So that's the big picture overview. And they have all submitted this. They've all had a chance to review it. And I believe they're all in support of it.
Can you review the other colors? There's blue, purple, and yellow as well, I see. In addition to black and green.
Yeah, the sheriff's, yeah, so each time a new color shows up, there should be a comment identifying where that information is coming from.
Okay. Blue looks like it's corrections. Purple is sheriff. Corrections, and then yellow. Agency-wide, another sheriff policy. Okay, go, Commissioner Edwards had his hand up.
As we move forward on this, is there anywhere in here that would put us contrary to federal law or case law?
No.
Anything like that? We had
there
cases down in Portland out of the federal court, it seems like last time. Something was going on. I just don't recall all of it. But we're 100%, we're okay. We're not gonna be in conflict with any.
No, there's specific provision, yeah. No, we will not be in conflict with federal law. There's specific provisions within the document which identify where we do need to be consistent with federal law.
Okay.
Elizabeth, can you boil this down for us in terms of like what, I mean, I'll look at it. I haven't looked at it yet. What is in here that represents a change from current practice of Thurston County?
I don't know that it represents a change in current practice since this legislation came out. I think what we're doing is memorializing the actions we're taking consistent with the Keep Washington Working Act. But the fundamental purpose of this act is to ensure that everyone has safe access to courthouse facilities, whether they're a citizen or not. And then the courts have their specific role because they're actually managing the courtrooms. And then the sheriff's office have their role because they are managing the correctional facilities where certain immigrant defendants may be being held, and there's certain policies and regulations they need to comply with. And then the patrol part is for areas around the courthouse to make sure that people are not being, that the county and the county officials are not cooperating with federal agencies in terms of trying to keep people from accessing the court.
There were two areas of kind of, the word is friction. There were two areas of friction that I was aware of back when this all kind of broke out. One related to, and they were both areas of friction, if I understood right, were addressed by Keep Washington Working. And one was really about the court security officers, like when a federal officer comes into the building, who needs to be notified? Were they allowed? Did they have to identify themselves? Could they come in with a weapon? All that kind of stuff. The second area of friction, which I know for a fact was legislated out by Keep Washington Working, was the law enforcement's asking for somebody's like where they were born, basically, and there was the WASPIC or one of those groups had said, well, there's consular rights that we're under treaty bound to make sure we respect, so that's why we're doing it. which was an argument, but the Keep Washington Working basically said, no, that's not, you no longer have to worry about that. We're gonna take that concern away from you. And so I know there were at least two places, and those two places where our policies needed some tweaking, not hugely, but just a little bit of tweaking. And I just wanna know if those were addressed, or were they controversial, or was there a problem getting those wrinkles worked out?
No, those wrinkles were worked out.
Okay.
And it's clearly laid out. The document's very detailed. But yes, so all those details were worked out. There is no further, to my knowledge or understanding, any conflict within, the sheriff's office about all these principles or the courts. And then the last issue you were referencing, the consular notification, the corrections facility was having some concern about that. And to make it easier, public defense is interfacing in that process so that correction facilities don't have to do it.
It's on page 5, 6, and 7, by the way.
Okay. So we're not gonna get any criticism from, from immigrant rights groups or stuff like that about how we're implementing Keep Washington Working. That's what I'm trying to make sure we're dialed up.
Right, and those are good questions. I can't promise that there won't be criticism. I mean, everyone may have their view, but I do feel like this is a very comprehensive, collaborative effort among the county officials and their diligence to being in compliance with Keep Washington Working. I think people will be happy that we're memorializing this and adopting a policy, that we have a clear policy in place. I think people will be very happy about that.
Commissioner Evans.
Are we actually kind of like reinventing the wheel just for Thurston County? Or I guess, what are other counties doing around the state? Are we all doing the same thing? I'm just trying to figure out, why don't we just follow the law if the law is, Keep Washington Working, or it's an act? How does it all fit? Why do we have to have something different? Because I think consistency is beneficial for all citizens in the state, and say access to the courts, whether you're legal or not. Well, legal or not, it's an interpretation possibly. We want them all to have access to the court. So why aren't we just adopting a generic, I don't see any difference that we're gonna be doing versus Kitsap County or something. So can you answer any of that? Why do we have to have something special?
Well, it's left up to each jurisdiction whether they want to just directly adopt the Attorney General's model policy, or if they want to finesse the model policy to their county. And so there's two options. I mean, we could simply do model policy, but what we have here is real intention by the players to commit to the actions that they put into this policy. And it's specific to how they operate their agencies. So I think big picture, we are totally consistent with the legislation. And just like you adopt your own ordinances about all sorts of things, you're just adopting your own policy about this within the confines of the law. I think our policy is better because it has more detail in it. And it directs staff more specifically on how to respond to certain factual situations and who to communicate with and what documents they need to review.
I guess I'm just, maybe a quick follow-up. Going back to whenever this first happened, I don't know, it's been a couple of years ago, I think now, there was some speculation that maybe a law enforcement employee or something maybe had called ICE or something like that. And maybe that's what brought this action on. And I just wonder, are we in a situation where we can tell somebody, hey, you can't call anybody about this? kind of infringing on free speech or that type of a thing. So I don't know that it's in here or not. I'm just using it as an example. Are those the things we're trying to regulate as well, that might go contrary to, you could call it free speech, I don't know. You can't yell fire in the theater, and we all know that, so. I don't, that's kind of a broad ask of you to see if you can address that. Are we trying to do something different? That's what I'm.
No, I don't think we're trying to do anything different except comply with the law the best that we can. And I think the value of this is that each elected official that has a role has personally committed to these with their own policies, and I'm just pulling their policies into this policy to taking the appropriate action.
Okay.
In terms of I can't really address your specific free speech questions. I mean, that's all fact specific, but clearly there's the overarching principle is that there's certain things that we cannot do, and that's collect information or share information with federal agencies that are trying to interrupt people's access to the courts.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. There'll be more to come as we get
Next steps,
Yeah.
with the board's concurrence, we can bring a resolution for you to formally adopt those policies on the August 3rd board meeting. If you agree with that, you will see this resolution is a little bit different, meaning who will sign this. In addition to the Board of County Commissioners, we would like to add the signatures of some of the stakeholders who have been part of these policies. And I think that will bring a little more validity to that resolution adopting these policies. And that's probably a little bit the nuance of that new resolution that you will see will include other signatures from the stakeholders who have participated in developing the policy.
Okay, I won't be at the August 3rd meeting, but if I have any concerns, I can address them at the agenda setting meeting.
Oh, we can probably, if you want to be part of that vote, we can bring that the following week.
Okay.
No big time frame crunch.
No, we have waited for this quite some time.
Yeah.
So August 10th?
Sure.
Yep.
Okay,
So let's
anything else on
plan
this item?
August 10th resolution.
I'm gonna review this.
Yeah.
This used to be my bread and butter before immigration. So, if I have any questions, who do I direct them to?
Myself or Elizabeth, either. Yeah, and thank you. In the meantime, if you have any questions, suggestions, and revisions, let us know.
Are we gonna try to make this available to some of the groups that you mentioned or something, so?
In advance?
Yeah, let them see it in advance, so we're not catching them blindsiding. I guess that's I always like to have adequate input from all parties. They might have a point that we didn't realize.
Yeah, I mean, this has got so much in it that's kind of specific and probably outside the scope of what they're interested in, but I mean, and I haven't heard, this.
It says draft on it now, and that to me means you gotta keep it in-house.
Elizabeth, what do you think about any sort of review, outside external review prior to our finalizing a draft?
I think that's a really great idea. I mean, I know a lot of people have been interested in this before COVID. I think it's clearly a public document, and the more input we can get into it, the more effective we can be.
Okay, well, the Strengthening Sanctuary Alliance has been very, kind of the lead group in this county on these issues. So I would like, and they've got sub-work groups that I'm sure would love to dig into this if we wanted to.
Could I suggest an approach addressing yours? Maybe I can work with Megan to develop a news release that can go out this week, stating the board intent is to pass this set of policies, and we'll make the set of policies available online. They can provide comments to whomever wants to provide comments. Will that work?
Sure.
And that will have everybody who wants to provide.
Yeah,
So let's work on that news release, and let's find a place online that we can place this draft policy and for anybody who would like to review and provide comments prior to your August 10th meeting.
Okay,
Will that work?
just making a note here. Thank you, Elizabeth. Let's go to, we've got a couple items left. Let's go to the sheriff's letter regarding IT systems. Is our next item, number 2. Commissioners.
Yes, attached to your packet is a letter that you received from the sheriff's office. And this is related to raising concerns about the replacement of the office, their office records management system, RMS, and the jail management system, as the JMS. And that is slated to be replaced by the new system called the Items. And the gist of their concern is the timing in which that system is scheduled to be replaced. Attached to your packet is the schedule of when the Items system was going to be replaced, and that's to begin in 2023. And I believe that was the source of the sheriff's concern in terms of the timing related to that. So there's 2 elements on this related to the cost, as he stated in here, of replacing their system. It's just about close to $1.5 million. And we only have accumulated so far on the internal rates about $500,000. So there is a gap in the budget to replace the system of about $1 million. That's the item number 1. The item number 2 relates to the schedule, and that goes back to resources as to how we can move forward with this project on an expedited way. Related to the funding gap, and Robin can confirm on this, there is an opportunity to fulfill the gap based on the bond that you just approved to replace all the larger systems. I believe there is capacity. You can confirm, Robin, to really overcome the gap for the $1 million to replace the system. So that issue is resolved in terms of the funding. The issue related to resources is a little more complicated. At this point, we as you know, we are embarking on a very complex systems, which is the ERP as well as the Amanda system replacement, and we have only one project manager who's doing and coordinating all that effort. So that is the gap in resources. So my proposal for you is we're going to be bringing to you a proposal for during the budget process for the 2022-2023 for you to consider hiring what I call project managers. They can help us expedite some of those items. And as soon as the board considers that, we can start working with the sheriff's office and bring that on a much faster timeline as we have it in this plan. So 2 elements with your request: the funding issue. It has been we've been able to confirm that we have capacity there in the bond, and the resources issues is something that I would like to for you to consider when we bring an item. Dennis is going to bring an item for you to consider creating project positions to help us deliver those complex IT systems. Robin, Dennis, anything to add?
Dennis, does that sound right to you?
Good morning. Yes, no, that does sound right. After we discussed some of the budgeting, I think we do have capacity with the bond funding, but we are maxed out on capacity from an IT project management perspective with the other large applications going on right now.
Do you have direct connection to Sheriff Snaza and able to kind of communicate that message to him, but better than we could?
Sure.
I mean, if the board backs this up, I don't know where the pleasure of the board is, but I just wanted to, because I mean, sounds like an excuse coming out of my mouth or Commissioner Edwards' mouth. It might sound like convincing coming out of your mouth because you know you've got the problem right at hand in terms of your personnel and how they're deployed. Commissioner,
I guess I have maybe a question when we talk about funding. There is some discrepancy, I guess, about this CARES funding, what it can and can't be used for. But one of the things was police systems to keep track of what is going on, keep the facts straight. Is that a possibility that we could utilize as funding so we don't drain the pot, so to speak?
Forgive me, but I'm not aware of that guidance, but certainly
Well,
we can look into the guidance.
I'm hearing all kinds of things from President Biden's administration, from different folks, from himself, about, well, we fixed this because now we're gonna be funding some of this police activity. Cameras, for an example, are a big issue, personal cameras. And so many agencies don't have the ability to do what need to be done, or the revenue to do that. So some of the technology is being funded. My understanding is through some of this grant money that
There
they're
may
adjusting.
be a different stream of money that is
Well, we
not
talked about some
rescue
CARES
plan.
funding.
So CARES funding ended last year, and we might have been able to do it with the CARES money last year. What we have
Well,
now.
maybe it wasn't CARES, but
Right.
it was the new
What
fund.
we have now is the American Recovery Plan, right?
Yeah,
The
I
ARP.
guess that's it. Okay,
Right.
my
And
terminology.
under the American Recovery Plan, it is a broad umbrella bill that Congress passed that has multiple streams of funding. There's a bunch of them under that act. The big money that we have in the bank today that we've been talking about, the 56 million over 2 years, that's, the title of that is State and Local Government Recovery Fund, and I keep referring to it as the Recovery Fund. It is only one of many streams. The Recovery Fund, from what I could tell, would not cover this system. This system would not be eligible for that funding. There may be other streams of funding under that act that I haven't uncovered yet, that our new financial management analyst that I'm currently hiring for might uncover, that would be eligible, that this would be an eligible cost. But what we're seeing under the recovery fund in the treasury guidance are limitations, like Romero was talking about earlier. There are a lot of limitations, and the police allowance in that bill clearly says that the police must be dedicated to COVID response. And this is not dedicated to COVID response. So I can look at it further, we can research the FAQs, and I'd be happy to send a question to US Treasury. They have a question line for counties, but currently I would tell you that this does not
I guess I'd like to see someone, I would guess the sheriff, because he's involved in that entity, is the WASPIC Association has a national group that it interacts with. And I would think some of these agencies that are trying to get money to do some of this technology advancement, maybe it's through the United States Attorney General's office or something. I really don't know. I mean, they've had other programs in the past.
Exactly.
And I'd like to be at least exploring those and making sure that we've looked into, and I don't know that that's in your bailiwick, maybe it's the sheriff that can get a hold of those organizations and see, hey, is there some money out there that, because that's one of the issues he's talking about is cameras, body cameras, I guess. And the maintaining of those and all the
It's my
records.
understanding that there is funding as part of the infrastructure bill. That it could be in that, the infrastructure bill that has not yet passed. It could be another stream in the recovery fund. There's a lot of
Well, I
federal
guess one
legislation moving right now.
kind of an unanswered implicit question of what you just asked is body camera. What we always hear is it's not the body cameras, it's the software management, the data management program. And if the program that the sheriff's asking for has some connection to that in terms of how it manages records, because those videos become records of the sheriff's office. So there might be a connection to be drawn, even though we're not buying the body cameras. If this is a predicate, it might fall within the umbrella of
When we do.
of funding,
Could be.
because it lays the predicate for us to be able to buy the body cameras at some point, if we just chose to. I don't know, that's just kind of.
Yeah, I'm just grasping.
So, yeah, no,
It sounds like the
I appreciate
board
it.
though, what,
We do
So-
look for every grant, and I wanna say that Heidi Thompson in the sheriff's office is a master at finding money.
Okay.
So if there's something out there, we'll find it.
it sounds like the board wants to accelerate this for the sheriff if in any way
Yeah,
possible.
so I appreciate that. So Dennis
Yes,
is gonna,
no, that's correct.
Dennis is gonna reach out to the sheriff, under sheriff, outlining the plan as to how you plan to address his letter. Both whether the funding gap, whether it's through the American Rescue Plan or any other ways, is already included. You have capacity on the bond. So whatever means that
We'll
is.
meet the funding need.
We
one way
meet
or
the
the other.
funded needs of the additional expenditures. Secondly, and I will encourage Dennis to relay that information as a plan, because you are not making a decision to create those positions at this point. That will be part of the budget process.
Right.
But certainly, that will be an introduction from Dennis for you to consider creating those project positions during the budget process. Because I don't want to come across that perhaps Dennis is going to commit the board to a decision that you have not made yet. But that's the plan. So if you can reach out to the other sheriff with that plan and let me know if you need any help from me or Robin, we'll be more than happy to do so.
Absolutely, will do.
Thanks, Dennis. All right, let's go to our last item. It's 12:08, but maybe you could just give us a quick
This is
update.
going to be very quick.
Yeah,
This is
Rochester
related to
CDBG projects.
The item, the CDBG funding, as you may recall, when it was returned 2 years ago for the county, the South Cities to distribute the CDBG funding, the board authorized investment at the Independence Park and Hosfield. So an update of those projects on the Independence Park is for you to read, but let me read that out loud.
Can I just real quick give Commissioner Mejia background?
Yeah,
For like
please do.
just a minute. So this relates to the CDBG like rotation we do. And then in 2019, it was South County's turn.
Okay.
And it's just under $1 million. But we share with the South County mayors get together and figure out how to divvy up their $1 million. Well, Rochester, for the first time that year, qualified. Even though it's not a municipality, it has enough people and under the guidelines it classified as being eligible for some money. That was kind of a surprise to the mayor of Yelm, the mayor of Tenino, and the mayor of Rainier, who weren't used to having to factor Rochester in. So Ramiro kind of represents on our behalf, and we had to kind of fight for some project money for Rochester.
I'm still looking my woods from that conversation.
Yeah, it was rough, and Ramiro fought for us, and we were able to get, I think about $250,000 of that million, so kind of a quarter of it allocated to a couple of park upgrade projects in Rochester, but there were complexities and it's taken a while, and so that's why I asked for an update to the board, kind of where did those projects, because I was down there for Swede Day and I saw a big sign on Independence Park and it was like, thank you. They did some upgrades and the county wasn't mentioned. So I just kind of wondered, well, where did our money slot into what they've done and what's left to do? And then there was the Independence Park is the area right behind the school district building. There's also a set of kind of soccer fields closer to the freeway. They called it Haas Field, and it was more complex because it was owned, it was more private, but they had like a foundation and like the ownership thing was a little tricky, and can we use the money for this thing that's not? So there was kind of untangling the legal relationships underneath the property management so that we could be sure that we were compliant with the law. And so that one really took a while to get unraveled.
Good recollection of the issues.
So I hadn't heard anything about it in a while. I just wanted to hear where things stood.
Yeah, so for the two projects, the Independence Park, the new playground equipment has been installed and the CDBG funding has been started withdrawn to cover that activity. And a few weeks ago, the school district was still looking for an available contractor to redo the exterior fencing surrounding the project, so it's moving forward. On the hospital, as you stated, the lease between the nonprofit utilizing the field and the ownership of the property has been extended to the maximum of 50 years, which is required by CDBG funding. And we have worked with the nonprofit to identify the scope as the next 2 weeks, for the nonprofit in Thurston County to meet and discuss the procurement process to get us to that point. Public Works is moving forward with the nonprofit to conduct a procurement of contractors. So we're working with the group. So some of the major issues, as Commissioner Mensah stated, has been resolved. And now it's just a matter of getting into the process of implementing the project itself.
And I'd like, when they come up with something, I mean, there were a couple different visions for what they would do at Haas Field, so I'd be curious what they did, what they end up deciding.
So I know that Jacinda's here and she's managing those two projects. Jacinda, when you get the chance to see the specifics of the Haas Field, the scope of work, could you send us that, please? She's probably taking a break. We'll follow up on that.
Jacinda's there. Did you catch that, Jacinda?
Sorry, Commissioners, I missed just the beginning. I did hear there was a request. Sorry about that.
Yeah, on the Haas Field, as soon as we have a good description of the scope of work for their project, can you send us that and I can share that with the board?
Yeah, and I can share what that scope of work is now. It may change once the procurement goes out because the amount that was set aside for that project, I believe, is only about $75,000. But currently they are hoping that with that funding, they can update their concession stand and make it a little bit more secure, add some fencing and gates around the fields, reseed the fields, and actually those are the three items.
Okay.
And then depending on how far the funding goes, that scope of work may be adjusted.
Okay, anything else from the board?
No, sir.
We'll be back at 2 p.m. We're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.